Just a driven noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. You propose the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steve Pun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello and welcome to the Pun Show. And how is everybody doing today? Huh? You ready for your weekend? So Chiefs aren't in the playoffs. So actually, to me, it makes the whole playoffs more interesting. Because you don't already know one of the teams that's going to be in the Super Bowl. Anyway, maybe Josh Allen will get his turn this year. So that's my plans. Watch football on Sunday. And I got to catch up with some other work stuff on tomorrow. But other than that, not a big weekend. Hope yours is better. Hope you have something exciting cooking. If you got any family coming over, that's great. So today I'm going to talk about like transgender people. I've been considering this a lot. And, it's been brought up on the show a few times. And every time MAGA starts losing an argument, they start screaming the word MAGA like they have some sort of hate Tourette's or something. I don't know what else to call it. But they just feel like, if they scream the word trans enough, then it'll make, the boogeyman logic go away. So I want to talk today about trans, what it really means to be trans. Is it a choice or is it, I kind of like the expression, it's not their fault, they were born that way. I have issues with that too, because it implies that there is a fault to be had. Anyway, I want to discuss a lot of things about being transgender. I'm not transgender. I wouldn't be ashamed if I were. I'm just not. But anyway, want to talk about that, and I'll spend a lot of time talking about that today. And feel free to comment. And if you have arguments or rebuttals or you want to yell at me, that's fine. And I really will try to respond to all your questions as honestly and forthcoming as I can. Just kind of, there's a process where I'll be going through things one at a time. So it might not be right away. It might wait until I get to that particular chapter. And I also just ask that you be respectful. That's all. But before we do that, I want to show you. Hi. I want to
250th anniversary on July 18th. Pledged to get.
You've probably seen this video, but I just want to get your feedback.
In my campaign for president, I pledged to give America the most spectacular birthday party the world has ever seen for America's 250th anniversary on July 4th next year. Already we've had big celebrations to commemorate the 250th birthdays of the Army, the Navy, and the United States Marines, but there is much, much more to come. We're going to have a good time. As we ring in 2026, Americans across the nation will see the iconic Washington Monument illuminated with festive birthday lights to honor the start of this historic anniversary year. Then from June 25th to July 10th of next year, we will host the Great American State Fair on the National Mall, featuring pavilions from all 50 states, highlighting breathtaking innovations and celebrating America's exceptional history and culture.
All right, we don't need to watch the whole thing. I just kind of wanted to give. He's going to go on. He's going to talk about the Patriot Games and all of that. But, part of it is just like the whole way there's this kind of way that he's taking credit for, the 250th anniversary happening while he's president, as though somehow he made that happen or whatever. But setting aside all of that stuff, am I the only one that feels like this video is AI? Like it seems so AI to me. And I don't want to start conspiracies or anything, but I just wonder, and does anybody else feel that way? It doesn't, it's, if I didn't know it was real, I would say it was AI. And I know that the White House really put this out. Everything he's announcing is really happening. I'm not saying it's fake news or anything, but is the video itself AI? And if it is, why? But anyway, just had some thoughts on that and wondering if anybody else had them. So if you do, go ahead and hit me in the comment section. If not, no worries. All right, so now I'm not going to skimp around a lot. I'm just going to start diving straight into the main topic for today, because there's actually quite a bit to cover. And I'm really, oh, whoops. Let's go here. All right, so let me come back over here, and now this is the tab, or the deck that I made today to cover all this. What's up? What's up there, Double G, the Guardian of Green? So, whoever you are, the first thing I want to do is just start from a medical standpoint or a scientific standpoint. What is transgender? And I know there's some people that really feel like it just comes down to whether you have an innie or an outie. Like it's really, that's all there is to it. But most medical professionals do not agree with that. And there's a reason why. And it's because who you are is not fundamentally down to whether you have an innie or an outie. Who you are is defined by, more than anything, your brain. And so I was thinking about, there was this Netflix series. Altered Carbon. Did you ever see that series, Altered Carbon? And their consciousness gets awoken and put into a new body, like later in time. And he's got to go and do this investigation and everything. So let's say that were to happen to you. Let's say your consciousness were to be placed into a different person. Would you be that different person? Or would that different person be you? If you follow me. Like, is the physicality what makes the person, or is it the mentality and the psychology what makes the person? I think most people would say that it's the mentality and the psychology. So if your mentality and your psychology does not align with your physicality, which is wrong? And is it that one or the other even is wrong? Is it just different? So wanted to go into some of the medical research into this and have an honest discussion. Are you transgender? I am not transgender. Doctors are a joke hell with Big Pharma, and people still listen to these fools. Masks don't work. I can't believe people wore them stupid things. Sheep. Okay. That's quite a lot of nonsense. All right. So let's go to There was a study that came out in 2022, and I found this one really interesting. And I hope that everybody can like really actually consider what's going on when I talk about this. They studied like 800 people's brains and 803 brain scans. And they showed well, I'll just read through it. 2022 whole brain dynamics study finding 4 distinct brain phenotypes exist: cis men, cis women, trans men, and trans women. And so I found this interesting because I think that too often we lock into this idea that cis men or that trans women are men who think they're women, and they think like women, and therefore they're trans. And then some people say, that that's okay, and some people think that that's not okay. And I'm not here to make an evaluation of whether it's okay or not. I'm just here to point out that apparently, according to these brain scans, the brain's functions showed 4 different kinds of images: cis men and cis men and cis women, and then trans men and trans women showed 4 different kinds of images. Like there's 4 phenotypes. It's not like a linear scale. It's more like a 3-dimensional cube. And everybody fits somewhere on that cube. And that is your gender according to the way your brain thinks of you. And like, you cannot ask somebody to just decide to make their brain different, because your brain is who you are. You can no more ask a transgender woman to become a cisgender male than you can a cisgender male to become a transgender woman. The distinction in the brain, the failure to even comprehend how that would happen if you're a cisgender male is identical to how the reverse would happen if you're a transgender woman. So let me just read through this, and then I'll show you something that I worked on. So trans women have female. It's not that trans women have female brains or trans men have male brains. Trans people show unique brain patterns that simply don't mirror the opposite sex. So what we know about gender identity neurobiology, that first of all, brain sexual differentiation may occur in utero influenced by hormones. So what that means is, like, when your body is first forming, when in the uterus, when your fetus is developing, first fate decides whether you're going to have an innie or an outie. And then after that's determined, later on, your brain starts developing, and your sexual orientation and your sexual identity starts forming in the uterus. But it could develop differently than for some people than others. And it can develop differently than what your innie or outie orientation was. And they've done all kinds of, they've done some studies on brain imaging, and they've been able to focus on what areas of the brain are different. And what they haven't determined is what the correlation is or what the causation is. We know that there's a difference, but we don't know why there's a difference. And we don't know if the difference comes from just uniquely biological variables, or if it can be cemented by sociological variables, and whether or not that's healthy or unhealthy for the person, if it is. So All right. So then this got me to thinking that we too much. So the chicken and the egg problem. Do trans people have different brains because they're trans, or are they trans because they have different brains? We don't know for sure. But what we know is that trans people do have different brains. It's not about their organs. It's not about the innie or the outie. It's about the actual brain and the actual brain chemistry. And so they aren't lying. They aren't saying they are something they are not. They are telling you who they are. And the problem is some people listen to them and some people don't. The only problem with trans people is that some people don't listen to them. So you always hear this argument, this kind of, well, how many genders are there? And this is what I want to show you. You know, if you start thinking of it as a four-dimensional thing, then it becomes a cube. It's not a line. It's not like male and female, and then, you know, like you're born a male and then you move along. So let me show you this. This is what I've been thinking about. All right. So this is another thing I made. So this is the old model line. You know, like you're a cis man or you're trans woman, and then this is you. You're somewhere on this line, right? So you might be more cis man, but you've got some feminine qualities. Your expression is slightly different. But it's still linear. You're either cis or you're trans. And you're either male or you're female. And everything goes along this line one way or another. But here's the thing. RuPaul is a gay man. He is not a transgender woman. But when he is in drag, he identifies as a woman, right? People always think trans people are, you know, like they talk about trans people as though they are people that dress in drag as though they are trans. Not all trans people, not all drag queens are transgender. Believe it or not, I know some people have told you that, and I know you've seen like the pictures of the grainy pictures in libraries and whatnot, but not all drag people are trans. And not all trans people are drag. In fact, there may be some overlap, but for the most part, trans people are trans and drag people are drag. Wait, what? I think you're talking about what I just said. Yes. You can be drag and not, you can be a cisgender, straight male drag queen. I know that blows your mind. Who says it has to be a crisis? Well, I'm just trying to understand trans people. So anyway, so I started thinking about it. If you have like these four, you've got you know, like male, female, and then you've got like your trans male, and you've got your trans female, and you start thinking of it like a cube where your three dimensions are let's say your three dimensions are: one, your sex assigned at birth, the biological characteristics you're assigned based on anatomy, chromosomes, hormones of birth, usually male or female, but includes intersex variations. And, you know, there's some people that want to include, you know, like only transgender, you know, like want to reduce intersex variations where, you know, like you've got an innie, you've got your outie, but it's like not quite out. And so it's kind of a sort of innie, and it's kind of, or you got an innie and an outie, or, you know, like the intersex variations are where your actual genitals, there's some confusion going on there. And some people want to say all transgender is just that, and that everything else is transgender is just some sort of made up dysphoria that they're just faking it or something. So there's your sex assigned at birth. There's your gender identity. It's that's your internal, deeply felt sense of your gender. This is what your brain tells you that you are. This can be a man, a woman, non-binary, or other identities, like however you see yourself, and that's your gender identity, and that is who you fundamentally are. But then there's also your gender expression. How do you present your gender to the world? Through clothing, behavior, mannerisms, voice, etc. This can be masculine, feminine, androgynous, or fluid. So you could be a tomboy and a cisgender straight girl, or you could be a butch lesbian, or you could be a transgender butch lesbian. There's all kinds of different things, and then you start putting labels on them. But I would say everybody has their own place in the cube to some degree. And so when people ask how many genders are there, I would say there are as many genders as there are people. At what, like you have a certain level of how much you express masculine traits and how much you express feminine traits. And there may be a difference between how you express yourself and how you perceive yourself. For instance, some of these MAGA men see themselves as being much more manly than they really are. I'm not going to mention any names like Ben Shapiro or Tim Pool or Tim Pool or Tim Pool. I don't know why I keep saying Tim Pool. I can't seem to stop it. But anyway, you got these men that think they're super, super alpha men, but they're actually little wussies. All right. So then you can have people that have a strong gender identity, but their gender expression is actually not quite as alpha as they think it is. So you can have a variation between your gender identity and your gender expression. And to some degree, your gender expression might be a choice, but some of it might not be. You can have mannerisms and things that are more effeminate than you intend to, or more masculine than you intend to be. There is an infinite number of possibilities of how all of these things can line up. And so that's why I started thinking of it as more of a cube than a linear sort of line. So let me go through some comments here. Okay. Wow. So we got some comments. Okay. So we got liberals believe the science. So let's talk about it. Yep. So that's what I'm doing. You didn't hear there were trans people back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, and you did hear talk about it. Were you alive? There was what's her name? Marsha Brady. The actress that played Marsha Brady had a movie where she was good friends with a transgender prostitute. But a man cannot be a woman and a woman cannot be a man. Correct. So we should never ask a man to be a woman or a woman to be a man. That would mean not asking a transgender woman to be a man. If what you are is in your brain and who you fundamentally are as a person is in your brain, then when you say a man cannot be a woman, you're actually asking a man to be a woman. You're asking them to change their mind to mollify your opinion. You're trying to make their identity about you. And you're asking them to do what you have just said is impossible. The idea that drag equals trans is very bizarre. Well, the thing is whenever you end up talking about trans people on Twitter or on social media, they end up showing you these drag queens reading to kids in a library to prove their point. So I think there are MAGAs who are very confused and think that any man, and you see, like, about the trans bathrooms, and they'll show these cartoons where a guy with a beard and a dress walks into the bathroom and starts raping women or something like that. So I think that most educated people aren't confused, but I think there are plenty of uneducated people who either are confused or aren't confused and deliberately foment that abusion. Is this pro-mutilation and pedophilia or anti-child abuse? I would say denying people life-saving health care is child abuse. And we'll get into that later. Right now, we're just on this one part. I'll go into the whole, medical, the what constitutes healthcare later. This is, I don't know what idealism you're thinking of or what practicality. This is just reality. That's all it is there are different brains. No, there isn't. There really isn't. The only real exception is from F. That's an opinion, but that's not an opinion that's informed. Like, they have done brain scans of 800 people and come up with different results different than what your opinion is. So I can either take not so private playlist 1771 from YouTube, I can take your opinion, or I can take an actual peer-reviewed scientific study. No offense, but I'm not sure that your opinion matters here. I don't think that this is a very successful. I don't think that trans people exist to split the LGBTQ voting bloc apart. I think it's just trans people just want to exist. Trans people do not generate anything. I think that there is a lot of mock outrage from MAGA as a culture war, and we'll go into that more later on the politics side of things. But I don't think it's about dividing the LGBTQ voting bloc. I think it's more about just generating outrage in general. Foolishness. This is just a lot of ignorance right here, and I'll get to all of that later. I don't want to go into that before I'm ready. I'll just say for right now, underage sexual reassignment surgeries don't really happen. These bunch of weird punts went way too far. They got us all to leave alone. They got us all to leave alone, but they wanted more. They wanted our blessings, and they wanted. I don't know what. I don't think they wanted anything at all from you. I don't think that they're doing anything at all. I think that what's happening is that you, and there is a significant chunk of people who have just made them into a boogeyman and then blame them for being the boogeyman. I don't know what transgender people have done to make all of this happen. I've seen this all over the country in person. It's interesting to me to see who points what fingers where. It's all neat thought exercise, however, also a waste of time. Well, it's a waste of time to somebody who, like, it's not a waste of time to you if nobody is trying to outlaw your very identity. Like, to the person who is being outlawed, this is not just about politics. It's not about games. It's not pointing fingers. It's just wanting to exist as your brain tells you that you are. Yeah. Yeah, I think the toxicity around them does, and I think that that toxicity is generated in order, like deliberately. And there are some people I know that are LGBT, that are LGB, but not T, you know. And I don't understand how, considering some of the people that I know and have heard say like really hateful anti-trans things that are lesbians, were around when the fight for gay rights and gay marriage and things like that. And now they make the same sorts of arguments against trans people that were made against gay people. Um, but I mean, you can be outlawed as an identity, and effectively, that's what RFK Jr. is doing, and we'll go into all of that later. But when you can't exist as your brain tells you are basically outlawed as a person. You cannot live your life the way that your brain is telling you to, even though it is not harming anybody. And that should not be the case. You don't have to agree with what trans people say and do and how they exist in order for them to be able to say and do and exist in the way that they want to exist, as long as there's no harm they're not harming anybody. All right, so let me go on to the next part of my tab here. All right. So we'll go into what constitutes gender affirming care now. This is, somebody had just brought this up. So gender affirming care, and this is like the American Medical Association supports gender affirming care, the American Psychiatric Association supports gender affirming care, the American Academy of Pediatrics supports gender affirming care, and the Endocrine Society supports gender affirming care. Basically, the entire medical community supports gender affirming care. All right. So when you say things like mutilation and stuff like that, you need to actually do the research and study what actually happens before you start just spouting off, because you've got like the entire medical community saying otherwise, and you can sit there and just say, well, that's the medical community, what do they know? Well, they know more than you. All major medical organizations agree gender affirming care is the gold standard of clinically appropriate care that can provide life-saving treatment for children and adults. So what does it constitute? What actually is gender affirming care? It starts with just social transition. And it's not like Donald Trump said, where, Bobby goes to school one day in second grade and he comes home Sally because some teacher told him he was trans. That doesn't happen. Put all the silly notions aside. If you think, oh, I can't believe they would do that, then maybe don't believe they would do that. Usually, in most cases, there will start with just social transition and just simple things like having your name changed to a gender appropriate name, pronouns, clothing, presentation, just having Bob be able to exist as Sally for a couple of years. Call Bob Sally. Affirm Sally's identity. Call her a she instead of a he. The more family structure they get, the more happy they are as people. And then you can try mental health support. You can have, typically they go to mental health support, not so that they can get counseled about like why, like I think sometimes people think gender dysphoria means that this is what's wrong with your brain, that your brain is interpreting your genitals wrong or something like that. Gender dysphoria is not thinking that you're one thing than another. Gender dysphoria is the discomfort caused by the identity in your brain and the identity in your genitals not meshing. All right. And so you need counseling to work through all of that and to be affirmed that it's not your fault. So then what happens is these kids start hitting puberty. And while I know that in the MAGA-centric world, there is a lot of disinformation about it. And when I say disinformation, I also mean, things that RFK Jr. is saying. All right. Puberty blockers are temporary. They can be reversed. But if you don't want them to, if you end up not wanting them to be, which is the case most of the time, they don't have to be. You can, like, if you have puberty blockers and you're a trans boy like my nephew is, then he got puberty blockers. He never developed breasts. He's about to turn 18, and then he can get surgery once he's 18 if he chooses. If he decides at some point, no, I was all right as a woman, then he can just stop taking his puberty blockers or his puberty blockers and just go back to being a woman. It's not it's reversible. It's not irreversible. There is hormone therapy where they start after a certain age, they start getting the hormones that they would be going through puberty with if they were the other gender, so that they can start, if it's a trans male, they can start getting, facial hair and things like that. And if it's a trans woman, then she can start, going through her own puberty process. Of course, she's not going to have periods and things like that. And nobody thinks they are. Like these little gotcha arguments are dumb because they're not getting you because nobody thinks that way. What we do think is that the brain is operating differently. And then surgery is rarely performed on minors. Professional guidelines recommend waiting until 18 plus. So this notion that this is being forced on children below 18, that's not true. And all of these steps with the puberty blockers and everything, all of those things require that a physician monitor you along. Most of the time, there's like a 2-year period where the with psychological counseling and stuff like that, nobody is rushing into these things frivolously. But you can say, well, what's the harm in waiting? Okay, well, before we do that, let me go. We have some. Okay. Okay. Gay and lesbians as a whole seemingly don't want to die on the hill of trans rights, and I feel that's what splitting the block is. Yeah, amen. Like, here's a story for you. Like, I think that there is this kind of notion that you have to be trans to fight for trans, and you have to be a woman to fight for women, and you have to be gay to fight for gays. When I was in the Air Force in 1989 and 1990, this was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This was like where you could get court-martialed for being gay in the military. And I had some friends that were gay. And one day, one of them hit on me, and I'm like, no, I'm not gay, And a couple of days later, another friend who was gay hit on me. And I said, I'm not gay, but, this guy is, if you're interested in him. So the next day I'm at work, and I get called over to the OSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, which was like the Air Force version of NCIS. So I go down there. I have no idea what's going on. And apparently they were running a sting operation to get the gays. And they wanted me to testify against the other gay guy that I had, told the one guy about, and I refused to do it. And one thing led to another, and I got in a lot of trouble because I refused to testify against a guy for being gay. And I think that straight people need to stand up for gay people. I think white people need to stand up for black people. I think men need to stand up for women. And I think that cis people need to stand up for trans people. It's not until the people that have the power decide to reject the power that the marginalized people can stop being marginalized. So I don't care who you are, whatever. If you're not fighting for the rights of the marginalized, then what are you doing? There are too many MAGAs, too many people that are willing to fight against the rights of the marginalized. I don't know what that does for you or why you feel better about that, but I refuse to join that crowd. So I appreciate you. I'm here for it 24 for being willing to die on the hill of those who are not your own personal group, your own personal identity. Okay. So now let's talk about the difference between gender and sex, because this is, the dumb, define a woman, define woman, like that kind of nonsensical, moronic, stupid, gotcha question. I hate that one. But like, what is a woman? Like, what is the difference between a man or between a sex and gender? Sex is a classification based on anatomy, physiology, genetics, and hormones. Its components are chromosomes, gonads, hormones, internal, external reproductive structures, secondary sex characteristics, and common categories, male, female, and intersex. And I want to point out that some of these components, like the chromosomes, the gonads, the hormones, these things can, even on a biological level, be contradictory and lead to people being trans. It's not that the identity and the biology are completely separate, but they aren't the same thing either. Gender identity is the socially constructed roles, behaviors, expressions, and internal sense of self. The components of it are gender identity, your internal sense, your gender expression, presentation, your gender roles, societal expectations. So if you're an alpha male and you present yourself in a certain way where you're trying to show how manly you are, that's your gender identity. That's no different than a transgender woman. It is still the identity that you project. You just think it's different because in your mind, everything lines up, everything is uniform, everything is where it should be because it's you. You can't understand how somebody else could be different because you're so locked into your perspective that you think that everybody must have that perspective. But I once had a friend tell me that everybody you think is peculiar thinks you're peculiar. And that really kind of hit me. You are as different from everyone as everyone is as different from you. Your perspective is your perspective. And if you think somebody else's perspective is extreme, they think your perspective is extreme. There's no one person that gets to define what is normal. Everybody's just different from everybody. And that's why I point back to that little cube thing. Everybody has, in a sense, their own gender because everybody has their own identity. Who you are in many ways is your gender. And so you can't ask people to change their gender, their perceived gender, not their sex. You can't ask anybody to change their gender any more than you can ask them to change their identity. And you can't ask them to change their gender or their identity any more than they can ask you to change your gender or your identity. So let's go on to the next thing. All right. So, what are the key medical definitions? From NIH Office of Research on Women's Health, sex is a multidimensional construct based on anatomy. See, I want you to pay a multidimensional biological construct. It's not a binary biological construct, but a multidimensional biological construct based on anatomy, physiology, genetics, and hormones. All animals, including humans, have a sex. Gender refers to socially constructed and enacted roles and behaviors which occur in a historical and cultural context and vary across societies and over time. So, how many genders are there? This is a trick question. Here's why. The Western binary man-woman is not universal and never has been. So, if you can't ask that question and get the same answer throughout culture, throughout time, throughout all the different cultures, and then it's not the scientific constant that you think that it is. There are many cultures throughout history and even throughout the world right now that are not just innie or outie. There's the I have no idea how to pronounce this. The Hijra, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. They have been a legally recognized third gender since 2014. Their history spans 4,000 years in Hindu texts. Neither male nor female, they hold spiritual ceremonial roles. These are like priests. They're like really revered in these societies. There's the two-spirit indigenous North America, umbrella term for gender diverse people in native cultures, seen as doubly blessed, often held roles as healers, mediators, ceremonial leaders. There's the Fa'afafine, Samoa, and Mahu in Hawaii. These are third gender identities with centuries of recognition. They embody both in male and female spirit, and they're respected in their communities. There's the Muxe, the Zapotec, Mexico, third gender in indigenous Zapotec culture, typically assigned male at birth, but embrace feminine identity and roles. So it's not just that there are third genders recognized in other cultures. There are third genders recognized and revered in other cultures. So we are kind of unique in Western culture in that we deny it and denigrate it and make people feel like they should be wrong for how their brain functions. We're the unique culture. We're not the typical culture. So if this were like truly a biological constant, why would there be so many cultures from people that had nothing to do with each other, like from India to Mexico, from Hawaii to North America? Why would we have this kind of culture in so many different regions? There was no cross-pollination going on. Historical fact: evidence for third, fourth, and fifth genders exists throughout recorded history across Asia, the Americas, Africa, Pacific Islanders, and the Middle East. The Western gender binary is the exception, not the rule, globally and historically. So there's that. Your whole binary gender thing is actually debunked by actual lived experiences of virtually every culture throughout the history of mankind. So what happened to the third gender traditions? In 1871, India, British law categorized all Hijras as criminals, revising centuries of acceptance, or reversing centuries of acceptance. In North America, the European colonizers killed Two-Spirit people, forced gender binary on indigenous peoples. In the Pacific Islands, missionary influence suppressed traditional gender roles. The pattern, wherever Western colonization occurred, gender diversity was criminalized and erased. So what happened to all this culture? We did. We decided that gender, that third genders were bad, and so then we just like eliminated them. We killed them. We made them, we suppressed them. Where are the reasons that they don't exist? And now we're trying to do it again. You cannot, somebody said, oh, you can't be outlawed as a person. You can. It's happened. It happened in India. It's happening here in the United States. We have more laws banning transgender athletes now than we have transgender athletes. And it's not just about transgender athletes anymore. That was just the opening. Now you got people saying, like, if you support transgender rights, then you're a pedophile. And so those things are remotely related. And honestly, anybody that as soon as they hear transgender and they jump to pedophile, they probably are pedophiles. Because it's like, that just shows your brain is going down that stream. So who's the real pedophile there? You're the one that started thinking about sex with children, not me. I'm thinking about somebody being able to pee in a bathroom. All right. So the modern recognition. So some of these places it's been restored. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. In Canada, you can get a transgender passport where there's an X option. Modern terminology. We've been like coming up with words like non-binary, gender queer, gender fluid, agender, new words for ancient concepts. Somebody was saying, oh, where were these people in the 80s and 90s, as though they didn't exist 40 years ago? They existed. I grew up in the 80s. I can tell you for a fact they existed. But at the same time, they weren't as noticed for a reason. They were hiding. It's like when you had people used to think being left-handed was evil. And so they were forced to become right-handed. And then as we started going, that's dumb to think that left-handed people are evil. And so they stopped forcing left-handed people to use their right-handed. Right hand. You know what happened? We had a whole bunch of left-handed people popping up. It's not that the biology changed. The culture changed. And when the culture changed, people were more free and to express that they were left-handed. Now, of course, being left-handed is just which hand you use. It is not remotely close to the same thing as your gender, which is who you fundamentally are as a person. And so you're asking people to suppress who they are as a person because for some weird reason that I just cannot fathom, you think that how they live their life is about you. But the truth is, gender is a spectrum, not a binary, and I would even say it's a three-dimensional spectrum. It's a cube. Throughout recorded history and since time immemorial, thriving cultures have recognized, revered, and integrated more than two genders. Hundreds of distinct indigenous societies around the globe still retain their long-established traditions for third, fourth, fifth, or more genders, according to PBS's independent lens. So the answer to the question, how many genders are there? As many as there are ways for humans to experience gender. Gender is cultural, personal, and varies across time and societies. Asking how many is like asking how many personalities are there. The question misunderstands what gender is. And this is where I say, please read. Like, don't just argue. Sometimes I think, and I see this on the left, on the right, in the middle. I see independents. I see people that are too proud to vote, that want to sit there and they just want to condescend. And I mean this across all kinds of issues. You got people that just have opinions and they want to have their opinions respected and they don't want to respect anybody else's opinions, but nobody wants to learn. Like, actually learn. I plead with everybody. Please learn. Learning is the greatest human achievement. And if you don't know, learn. And I'm always willing to learn. I'm always willing to consider other perspectives. And if you have one, go ahead and show me something to think about. But just no, it's not, you libtard, is not asking me to think. It's asking me to not think. And it's asking me to not think because you don't want to think. But if you have a valid point, I am way open to considering it. All right. So let me go back here and see if there's. So I think maybe the MAGA's left. Yeah, the MAGA troll machine seems to have departed. Oh, well. So here's the self-defeating argument. Cis people say, I just can't understand how someone could feel like they're a different gender. Translation, my identity is so fundamental, I cannot conceive of it being different. They're making the trans person's argument. That's exactly how trans people feel, except their fundamental identity doesn't match their assigned bodies. The point being, if you say that you can't understand how someone could feel they're a different gender, then you should be saying the same thing for them. They don't understand how you can be your assigned gender. Their perspective is equally different from you as your perspective is different from theirs. Except they're not trying to make your perspective illegal. Their perspective doesn't make your perspective something you have to defend. Their perspective is not forcing you to live your life differently than they do. For you to live your life according to your perspective doesn't cause society to push back on you. But what you're doing is you're saying, if you don't live the way I told you to, even though your brain works just the same as mine, it just gives you different signals, then I'm going to make your life hell. So let me ask, you're a cis man? Can you decide to be a woman? Why not? Because that's who your brain is telling you you are. So when you ask why trans people can't just accept their biological sex, it's for the exact same reason that you can't change what you think your biological sex is. The brain functions the same way, just in reverse. We are what our brains tell us we are. The irony is that closed-minded cis people are so closed because they are so much of what their brain tells them they are, and they can't conceive of anyone else's brain working differently. Their inability to conceive alternatives is evidence that trans people aren't making a choice. My point there, the very fact that you can't accept trans people is proof that trans people are real. Everyone's brain creates their sense of gender identity largely outside of their conscious awareness. You never sat down and said, gee, I'm going to be a guy today. I've given it some thought, and I was born a male and I'm going to be a male. It was never a conscious choice. And that's because a lot of this stuff has to do with your brain chemistry that happened in your brain while you were still in a fetus. That's why I wanted to start off with the medical aspects of things. This is just a lot more complicated than a lot of MAGAs would have you believe, or a lot of anti-trans. I see some people, like I see Democrats that are also anti-trans. I do not understand why trans people get so much hate. They're the most marginalized group of people, and they make up like somewhere between 1/2 and at most 2% of the population. So why do they, and they're just an outsized amount of hatred. All right. So this leads into the next point, is why we need to understand them and why we need to accept that they actually exist. Why we need to understand these things. Trans youth suicides attempts, about 40 to 50% of trans kids report that they tried to attempt suicide before they graduated from high school. All right. This is literal life and death. That's 10 times the rate of the general population, of the cisgender population. You're 10 times more likely to try and commit suicide if you're a trans person than if you're a cis person. Now, you might say, well, that's because they're trans, they're crazy, and so that's why they're committing them, they're trying to commit suicide because they're trans, which, if you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, would be a reasonable thing to study and to consider. Is it because they're trans, or is there another reason? Is this a correlation, or is this a causation? And so what they did is they've gone through and they've looked at different societies that are more accepting or less accepting. They've looked at different treatments where they've, like where trans people were accepted or denied. And what they found is, first of all, when they have strong parental support, affirming their identity, the suicide rate drops 93%. And when the inverse happens, like in all these states, we'll get into this in a little bit, when all these states have geared up all these anti-trans laws, and I'm not talking just about the school laws, I'm talking about things like RFK Jr. right now is doing that will just make it almost impossible for trans people to get care when they're young. This actually amplifies the suicide rate because they're being villainized, they're being ostracized, they're being bullied in schools. All of these things actually make it harder for them. They're being forced to deny who their brain says they are, and their brain can't change any more than your brain can change. Like, it's their brain. And I don't want to say it's not their fault, because there is no fault. Nobody did anything wrong. Trans people aren't doing something wrong. They're not creating, they're not having some moral crisis. The people that are demanding them change are the ones who are acting immorally. All right. So when you see these places where there's these anti-trans laws, the suicide rate goes up from 7 to 72%, depending on how severe these laws are. So when you try to accept them and help them, they are less likely to commit suicide. When you try to villainize them and ostracize them, they are more likely to commit suicide. So that suggests, and I would even say proves, that the suicide rates are not because they're trans, it's because of how they are treated for being trans. All right. So this, when they're not accepted, there's the baseline risk of like 40 to 50%. When they are accepted, it lowers the risk. When it's the whole family, it lowers the risk. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, I think family acceptance means anyone in the family. 57, like if your brother or sister, even if you have an ally in the family, it reduces it. And strong support, which, by the way, one of the biggest support factors trans kids can get is team sports. So in September of 2024, a study for anti-trans laws caused suicide attempts. This is proving that that there's that correlation. 61,240,000 trans and non-binary youth across 19 states that passed 48 trans laws. That's 61,240 kids tried to kill themselves rather than live with the laws that you're passing. So I just want you to think about how evil that is. How can those laws be justified when they are literally causing children to kill themselves? That's not just correlation, that's causation, established using difference in differences design. Suicide attempts increased 7 to 72% after laws passed, with highest percentage increase among 13 to 17-year-olds 2 years after enactment. So what reduces suicide risk? Access to gender-affirming care. When you have access, it cuts the attempts in a year in half. Just having access to care. And when you say gender-affirming care, it doesn't just include, like having a surgery or something. It includes counseling. It includes being able to talk to somebody about what is understandably a very chaotic thing going on in your head. Especially when you're sitting there and you're just trying to watch TV and there's all these commercials coming on talking about how evil you are. The more, in general, the more accepting the community you're in, the less likely you are to try to kill yourself. All right, so now let's talk about this sports crisis. I knew that, I guess, nothing scares away MAGAs like stating facts. And as soon as they saw this was going to be factual, they all left. Oh, well. So we're not getting nearly the comments, which I'm actually happy about because I wanted to be able to have this civilly. So there's there's no like transgender athlete registry, but if you were to like take the number of high school athletes and then look at the number of transgender teens, then it would be somewhere around 1,000 athletes. Or, I'm sorry, there'd be somewhere around 1,000 transgender athletes, which would be about 0.5% of students who are playing sports right now, which would correlate just with the number of transgender people there are in school. Of those 1,000 trans athletes, 19 of them have won championships since 2017. And some of those championships were the same people, which comes out to 0.0114% of the crisis. And again, that's if there's 0.5% of the athletes are trans and they're winning 0.014% of the championships, that would suggest that cisgender athletes are still more likely to win than transgender athletes. It's not just the number, it's the percentage. Cisgender athletes, there are very few cisgender athletes that would compete on any level at their own gender. There are a handful. But is that handful and denying their rights or denying their trophies or whatever, is that worth the lives of thousands of transgender people that are trying to kill themselves every year? Like, you've got to look at the cost either way. And now there's some laws or some situations where if a trans athlete wins or places, they share a podium spot with the cisgender person that would have taken that had they not won it. I'm not opposed to that. I think that there are some sports where transgender people have advantages. I think that there are some sports where transgender women actually have a disadvantage. But I think that the percentage shows that hypothetical is rarely important. And you might point to, well, this happened or that happened, and you might point to me one of these 19 championships that were won. And that's not evidence. That's evidence of how rare it happens. Like, anecdotal evidence is evidence of a lack of evidence if there's no correlating statistical evidence. And the statistical evidence is transgender women are less likely to win a championship than cisgender women. But we have spent, just in the 2022 midterms, we're not even talking about the 2024 presidential election, but just on the 2022 midterms, we spent more than $50 million on this thing. The hostility and the hate and just the denigration of trans women competing in sports is completely out of proportion. Completely out of proportion. If you look at these numbers, there's $50 million spent in 2022, 1,000 trans athletes. You could have just given every trans athlete $50,000 to not compete. What could we do with that money? Could give each of the 1,000 trans athletes $50,000 to not play sports. How about spending some of that money on helping them get counseling so that they don't kill themselves instead of trying to drive them to kill themselves? So now let's talk about Leah Thomas, because I know some people are, if you're watching still, you're talking about Leah Thomas, right? This is the person that everybody knows who Riley Gaines is, but you may not know who Riley Thomas is. Riley Thomas is the person that tied for 5th with Riley Gaines, and she won a trophy for I think it was the 100 meter. And so what actually happened? She won one championship for the 500 freestyle. She placed 5th place in the 200 freestyle, where she tied with Riley Gaines, which means 4 cisgender women finished ahead of her. And she finished 8th place in the 100 freestyle. 4 cis women beat both Leah and Riley. Nobody in the history of mankind has ever done as much to build a career off a 5th place finish in an obscure race than Riley Gaines has. She tied for 5th. She got a podcast out of it. She's got a book. She's got a speaking tour. She's going and she's giving congressional testimonies. She's got a leadership center thing. And she's like suing as though somehow she were drastically wronged. For every, and other than that one championship, I think Leah Thomas actually had a couple of other wins, but for the most part, she did not have a remarkable swimming career. She wasn't, like the most decorated swimmer in history. She got defeated by trans women or by cis women all the time. Riley Gaines is the only. Name another female swimmer. Name somebody that won an Olympics in 2020. For every one championship won by a trans athlete, approximately 6 to 8,000 were won by cis athletes. If trans women had an overwhelming advantage, they would dominate. They don't. I looked, I could not find, I'm not saying there isn't one, but I'm saying I looked, I couldn't find a single trans female athlete that won a scholarship. I haven't, and Grok couldn't find one, and Claude couldn't find one, and neither could the Google AI. So I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying if they do exist, I just could not find who they are. In fact, Leah Thomas was on a scholarship, but she got a men's scholarship before she transitioned. Sadie Schreiner made news complaining colleges wouldn't offer her scholarships because she's trans. And the NCAA policy starting in 2025, thanks to a certain orange-hued, overgrown fat pygmy, not pygmy, what's some Oompa Loompa, explicitly states trans women assigned at male birth may not receive athletic scholarships for women's teams. So they had to literally make a federal case out of something that was not happening. They literally made something illegal that wasn't happening just so they can make trans women feel bad. And you wonder why they're committing suicide. So what about, now let's talk about the whole bathroom thing. All sports are rigged. Another one for the left. Another L for the left. America's back. Haha. Okay. I don't know why you're seeing this in terms of left and right. Because, you know, like Caitlyn Jenner is transgender. As far as I know, Caitlyn Jenner used to be Bruce Jenner. All of MAGA really want to get railed by trans women. I'm not going to comment on that, but I would like to see their search history. Okay, violence. Who's really at risk? There's this, you know, what's her name? Elise Stefanik. That is she the one? Which one? Nancy Mace. That just thinks that any moment now, a transgender woman is gonna kick open her door and violate her or something like that. When honestly, if I were a transgender woman, I wouldn't want to be in the bathroom with Nancy Mace. She's the scary one. She's so badly wants to be a victim. So 4 times higher violence against transgender women than cisgender women. There are, since 2013, there were 372 transgender women have been murdered. 73% of those, well, almost 74% were Black. 37% of trans women are sexually assaulted in their life. And 52% of trans women of color get raped. So when we're talking about violence and you're asking trans women to go and use the men's room where they are more likely to be subject to violence, where is their safe place? What about the other way around? Violence by trans women in bathrooms. How many trans women have actually been convicted of assaulting cisgender women in bathrooms? 0. There is not a single case of a trans woman attacking a cisgender woman in a bathroom. And I know what you're thinking, and I'll get there in a minute. What do bathroom bans actually do? They force the trans women to the men's room where they have a 2.5 times higher risk of being assaulted, and they force trans boys into the women's room. If you're going to do this, right, you're going to put the trans boys into the girls' rooms. Is that what you want? This hormone, you know, the guy that's got the hormones, the trans boy that's got the hormones, he's got a beard. You want him peeing in the room, in the stall next to you? How do you feel about that? Or should just all trans people use the women's room or the men's room? And trans boys using the women's room, actually, there's a slightly higher risk of them assaulting women than cisgender women or transgender women. So the real world impact, 58% of trans people have avoided going out in public due to safe bathrooms. Like they just, after you get assaulted a couple of times in the bathroom, you don't even want to go out in public anymore because somebody might assault you and they don't want to get assaulted. All right. 38% avoid particular places because of lack of safe bathroom options. And where they do have safe bathroom options, studies in Massachusetts and nationwide, no increase in safety privacy violations when trans people use appropriate bathrooms, meaning the bathroom that they prefer. Bathroom bans result in high rates of harassment against trans people and butch masculine appearing just cis women. So that's the other thing, is who determines if you're trans. You have like masculine looking cisgender women getting harassed in bathrooms for being transgender when they're not. If someone, and here's the thing, it's not like the bathroom law is like some kind of magical force field where if you decide that you're that it can only be assigned by birth, you can only go into that bathroom if it's your birth gender, then it creates a magic force field that keeps anybody out. Like the stalkers and the pedophiles and the psychos and the sociopaths can go through whatever the law is. It's not like they're being held back by the law. If they're going to rape a woman, the idea that the bathroom law is going to be what, that's the bridge too far. Come on, like think about it. That does not protect anybody. It just hurts law-abiding people. Bathroom laws, access laws don't create force fields. Someone willing to commit rape isn't deterred by a bathroom sign or access policy, but they do force trans people into dangerous situations while solving zero actual problems. Oh, thought. So I know that, thought I had the, oh, okay, so I somehow managed to actually. So what about the Loudoun County lie? Because I know that that's immediately where some people started going. What about, guess you never heard about that, right? All right, so wait, why don't we figure out, there hasn't been a drastic rise in gender dysphoria. There is no rise in gender dysphoria, just people hopping on a bandwagon. There's no bandwagon or dysphoria or rise in gender dysphoria. What there is people, like I said before, There was no rise in people that were left-handed once we decided that being left-handed was okay. For a long time, we thought society isn't the same. You can go back. There are comparative slopes to the people, the rise in people that are identifying as transgender and people that are identifying as left-handed. The slope is the same. What changed is not that people have gender dysphoria. What happened is that people could have gender dysphoria. You've never heard of liberal Democrats, LOL, the alphabet mafia was raging back in Biden's, and I don't have any idea what any of that has to do with anything at all. Humans have rights. Yes, they do. Blame the school system. The school is... I have no idea what you think they're teaching or what you think is wrong with what they're teaching. But I am going to guess that you don't either. I don't think you have the foggiest clue what is being taught in schools today. I think you just yell things without learning them. Like this is, please, Mr. Trumpster 74. Read a book. Like actually learn what you're talking about instead of just yelling and blaming and being visceral. Like be an honest, decent person. And if you have like an honest, decent point to make, I am more than open to consider it and to contemplate it. But just the school system is a joke. They teach kids the wrong bleep in school instead of teaching them history. They come out of that, they're gay or something. That's just, they aren't doing what you're saying they're doing. That's just, they were trying to get parents to put, okay. They were not trying to get parents to put children on puberty blockers because a little boy picked up a Barbie doll in main news all the time. What happened is people yelled stupid stuff like that all the time because Donald Trump said that it was true. This never happened. This is just nonsense. There was never a parent trying to put their child on puberty blockers because a little boy picked up a Barbie doll. It's just not true. If you have a link to an article showing me a specific parent trying to get their child puberty blockers because he picked up a doll, go ahead, drop the link in here and I'll look at it. But this is made up nonsense. And I am trying to talk about actual, real things here. So please keep this conversation grounded in reality. It's like people avoiding the idea that bullets can having their grains reduced. Did you mean brains? I think he meant brains. But yeah. Yes, reality. So go ahead and show me the link. Show me the link, please. Go ahead. I dare you to show me a link about that. An actual real story. Oh, you're talking about, I don't know what you're talking about with, I don't know what bullets having grains reduced, like lower gunpowder. I don't know what that has to do with what we're talking about. I don't know. I don't understand what your metaphor is. Trans people exist. All right, so let's talk about the Loudoun County lie. This is one of their favorite things. This is one of the things that I bet our friend Freaky Lilg likes to believe is true. That they talk about this case where there was a transgender girl that assaulted a girl in a locker in the bathroom, and it was all because they had these loose bathroom laws that allowed trans people to use them, and then this guy raped a girl or something like that. But this is not what happened. So let me just go through. what conservative media claimed in 2021. A gender-fluid male student used transgender bathroom policies to access the girls' bathroom. He attacked a random girl. School covered it to push the transgender-friendly bathroom policy. This proved transgender policies are dangerous. Now, setting aside whether or not this would actually prove that, is this actually what happened? What really happened here? First of all, the attacker was not transgender. The mother confirmed it. Investigations found no evidence he identified as female or gender fluid. There was all kinds of, even in the lawsuit, lawyer tried to prove he was a transgender woman. Couldn't prove it. There was no evidence that this attacker was transgender. So that's the first part of your problem with this story, is the transgender person that attacked and assaulted the other girl wasn't actually a transgender person. The second problem is that the attack happened in May 2021. The policy wasn't implemented until August of 2021. So A, the person wasn't transgender. B, the bathroom policy was not in effect. It wasn't trans people could use the bathroom that they chose. That was not a thing yet. This wasn't a random attack either. The victim and the attacker had a prior relationship and had met in that same bathroom for consensual activity before. And this time she said no, and he didn't listen. And so we had a sexual assault. There's no evidence he wore a skirt or a kilt, despite what the conservative news said. The truth is that there was a real problem. This guy raped a girl in school. And then the school board tried to cover it up. Not because it was a transgender issue, but because it was a sexual assault issue. Then he got sent to another school where he raped another girl. All right. That's the real problem. It has nothing. I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm saying it wasn't a transgender issue. The gross thing is that somebody took this vile thing that happened and made it into a transgender issue when it had nothing to do with anyone being transgender. It had nothing to do with bathroom policies. But for some reason, some sicko right-wing nut job decided that they were going to make this a way to smear transgender people. This was a cisgender male using bathroom policies that banned transgender women from using the opposing women's or using the women's bathroom. And they turned that around and they made it as though it were something that it wasn't, just so they could hate on people that are already hated. The real scandals is that teachers at both schools warned administrators. This is like the teachers saw it coming. There were warnings coming. Teachers at both schools warned administrators about the attacker's conduct weeks before each assault. The student's grandmother warned his probation officer between assaults. The student's grandmother warned his probation officer and called him a sociopath. The superintendent lied to the school board meeting, claiming no knowledge of bathroom assaults. Student was transferred to the second school where he assaulted another girl in 2021. Grand jury found a remarkable lack of curiosity and adherence to operating in silos. So this is not trying to justify what happened. This is trying to explain what really happened. Okay. This whole Loudoun County thing is just nonsense made up by right-wing media to try to vilify transgender people. And they couldn't find an assault. They couldn't find an actual attack by a transgender woman. So they made one up and they told these lies. Trans women are men? No, they aren't. These are trans people just brainwashed. Okay. No, they aren't. What? All the way through history, dude. All the way through history. Through every culture, every continent. But freaky Lil Kill, has this perspective that he knows more. The kid raped multiple times in multiple schools and was protected. Yes, and that's terrible. He was a cisgender kid. He was a cisgender kid. So, are you going to make all cisgender kid responsible? You don't even accept reality. The people need to be locked away. Yes, they need to be locked away. The people that were responsible need to be locked away. Making people that weren't responsible locked away is just sick. Doesn't matter if they identify as trans according to the left. I don't even know what that means. Like this is what I mean, like, this is just, I don't care if I'm wrong. I'm just going to blame the left anyway. Okay, there is no transgender. Why is this your? Because the right keeps pushing this as an example of transgender people assaulting women in bathrooms. And it turns out it's a lie. That's why it's my argument. And I'm not saying there are no transgender people. I'm saying that there's no such thing as trans. What I'm saying is that trans women are not men. I'm saying trans women are women. And you can go back, watch the beginning of the thing. I've got this all tightened down and buttoned up. These are facts that I am stating, not opinions. Your ignorance is not on the same par with my knowledge. That you don't know what I'm talking about does not mean that I don't know what I'm talking about. So do cows, but they don't brag. Okay, the real problem is saying they identify. No, the real problem is saying if they identify as that, if they identify as trans, they are trans. Yes. That's what makes them trans. I can't tell it. You're confused because your brain is not able of accepting things. All right, so now we're just getting into slurs and cussing. There's two genders. No, there's not. Okay, in the US and UK, women in prison have been rated by trans women. You know what? In the US and UK, women in prison have been raped by men. They've also been raped by women. You're talking about prisons, dude. Prison rape is not just isolated on trans women, on cisgender women. Guards rape women in prison. What do you think that the word prison rape just got invented last year? Okay, so now we're just getting into crude stuff. Nope, the left says that even if they identify as trans, they're trans. He doesn't identify as trans. That's the point. He doesn't say he's trans. You're dealing with some exceptionally stupid people, I assume, on a vertical feed. Yeah. Interesting. I like, as soon as I started doing vertical feeds, I started getting more like MAGA things. I know this guy is definitely insane. Okay. So you just got punked by an insane guy. All right. So let's go back to the actual conversation. Oh, I see what happened. Okay. So now, the bottom line, like here's the, okay. So now you've got RFK Jr. that's going to make it so that right now you have 160,000 trans youth that need care. And RFK Jr. is basically going to ban transgender care for youth. And this is against the overwhelming majority of medical and scientific advice worldwide, including America. Every major medical advisory committee, every single study that's been done, there's absolutely no medical reason for his decision. But he is going to make it so that if any hospital, any facility gives gender affirming care for anyone under 18, that includes even counseling, that entire hospital will not receive any Medicare or Medicaid funding, which means that it will make it impossible for them to operate. He's basically just making it impossible for kids to get transgender care that they need, life-saving care. And if they do it and they lose funding, then their hospital goes under, and then you don't get cancer care, and you don't get care for heart surgeries, and the hospital closes down. Anybody can, you'll just have people die if they provide care that is medically necessary for trans kids. This is going to result in about a 40% increase in suicide attempts, about 5,000 more per year, conservatively, considering about 150 to 250 of these attempts succeed, or about 3 to 4% of these attempts succeed. That's going to be like another 150 to 250 kids that die every year because they cannot get this care. And RFK Jr. is saying so-called gender affirming care has inflicted lasting physical and psychological damage on vulnerable young people. This is not medicine, it is malpractice. Which is just a lie. There is no truth to that statement. Every major medical organization says gender affirming care is the gold standard of clinically appropriate care that can provide life-saving treatment for children and adults. What he's doing is effectively barring trans children from getting the care they need to save their lives. It's not might bar, it's will bar. It's not some care, it's all medical gender affirming care. You can't even go and talk to a counselor without getting the hospital shut down. It's not in some places, it's nationwide. The evidence is clear about what happens when you remove this care. Suicide attempts increase dramatically. Hey, dude, go ahead and ask me a serious question, but nothing you have said so far is remotely serious. So you think it's good that children die? Why don't trans women fight to be in male bathrooms? They do. Trans men do fight to be in male bathrooms. It's not life-saving care. Yes, it is. The numbers don't lie. When you provide health care, when you provide gender-affirming care, the suicide rate drops 93%. That is saving lives. Gender affirming and care is child abuse. It is not child abuse. You have an opinion for something you do not understand and have no curiosity about. You are not a medical professional. You are not in any way qualified to have an opinion on this. You can have one, but I have zero respect for your completely uninformed, belligerent opinion. All identity politics is okay. How is hating transgender people not identity politics? Or, what makes yours not identity politics? They're not hurting kids, they're saving their lives. This whole administration is made up of arsonists, criminals, and scoundrels. How are these brainworm idiots in charge? I have no idea. You have a guy that literally has a freezer filled with roadkill giving medical advice. I don't know. Why does it need to be pushed? Why does it need to be resisted? If everybody just let trans people alone, we wouldn't be talking about this. I didn't bring up the conversation. I didn't pass like 900 laws. There are more laws against trans people competing in sports than there are trans people competing in sports. I'm not fixated on children's sexuality. And gender identity is not sexuality. That you make it about sexuality is actually indicative of you being the pedophile. You're the one that thinks of children and connects straight to sex. So what is wrong with your worldview that you cannot see children apart from sex? See, this guy is just every comment is about sexuality and being a pedophile. So I imagine that if the FBI ever gets your computer, you're probably going to jail. I hate to see what's on your hard drive. The experts on here who only tune into propaganda machine rhetoric, then come here to. So what did I say that's wrong? What did I say that's propaganda? What did I say that's actually subjectively wrong or objectively wrong? Check my music. Okay. Sure. Okay. Trans men typically end up passing better giving the effects of testosterone. Why do these freaks in the other chat want trans men using the women's bathroom? Throw up a pic of Buck Angel. Yeah. I've done this before, showing some trans women and trans men and asking which one would you rather be using the restroom your daughter is in. Okay, this is the guy that came. Okay. So what you're telling me is you're a horrible father. Okay. Conservatives are the ones who can't get their minds out of other people's pants. I have not said a single thing about sex this entire time. If you can't, people that can't distinguish between sex and gender, these are the same kinds of people that cannot that view, like Donald Trump, that view all women as whether or not they want to have sex with them. I think Gerard. Which one is Gerard? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Gerard. I've got a cavalcade of hate. Didn't mean to misread you. So you could use therapy, but you probably aren't self-aware. So that's talking to somebody else. All right. So as much as you use the R word, I would think if I am really as stupid as you think I am, then why can't you come up? I'm not going to post your comment because I hate that word and don't use that word and don't display that word. But if I'm really as stupid as that, then why can't you come up with a single cogent argument to deflect what I'm to counter what I'm saying? Like, you are actually admitting that you're dumber than me. Okay. All right. So I think, was that the end of it? All right. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is trans people don't owe anybody an explanation for existing. The people who need to do the work are the ones uncomfortable with trans existence. That's their baggage to unpack, not trans people's. So if you want to look at it, this right here is the deck that I was using. And if you want to go, there's links to all that. Everything that I said to confirm. We've got the tampon Tim thing. That's the crux of the whole issue. The trans ideologies are trying to blur the lines. What is trans ideology? Who's trying to make men and women interchangeable? Like, this is all just, I don't even know what to call it. This is like trying to argue that circles have right angles. Like, it's so far outside of the actual conversation, so far removed from what the thing actually is. There's no such thing as a trans ideology. There's not like somebody going, we need to have trans people or something like that. Trans people just simply exist. There's no trans ideology. There's nobody trying to convert people to trans. Nobody's trying to blur lines between men and women, whatever that means. There's just trans people that exist. This is just trying to acknowledge that some people exist outside of your little binary, very self-centered, very limited scope of worldview. You are the frog in the well, insisting that anybody outside the well that sees anything outside the well is lying and filled with propaganda and have this non-well ideology. Again, my suggestion to you is to learn instead of argue. So we've got Jordan and this 26 whatever silly jar whatever. Children haven't had this is, tell that to the kids who had their bodies mutilated and now hate their life and want to. Such things never happened. Also, Jesus saves lives, but he doesn't lie. It's an agenda by the NWO to divide people. Did you hear where, and I don't even know what you think, I don't know what the NWO is, or I have no idea. Like I can't keep up on weirdo, wacko, right-wing, dumb conspiracy theories. I love to ask people all the time, what have you actually, where has a trans person ever actually hurt you to make you this angry about them? I'm not. Nobody's asking anybody to make life decisions before they're over the age of 16. I covered this before. Maybe you weren't here, but nobody gets surgery before the age of 16. Most surgeries don't happen until you're 18. I don't know where I'm getting them. They're just coming from the feed. Okay, let me see some. All right, how many? How much time do we have? Okay, no. And the conspiracy nuts are cooked, entirely dumbed down population. They really, I mean, and I want to have a conversation. Like I want to talk to them. And you get responses like this. Nope, I believe we need to call the BS out. What BS? What? You are sitting there stating things that are not true, and you're saying that you're calling out BS. There aren't the surgery, the recommended procedure, and 99.999% of the time, surgeries don't happen before 18. Most states that allow most states don't even allow it. People aren't getting surgeries when they're 7, dude. That's just not happening. That is a made up thing that right-wing liars tell you, and you believe they're right-wing liars because they tell you what you want to hear. This is not happening. Children are not getting transgender surgeries. That's a lie. Visit Oregon. Okay. No, children aren't getting surgeries in Oregon. Stop making. I agree. No, they haven't. Kids have not been transitioned behind their parents' back. I think there was one example, one story where one kid who's sued to be able to get transgender surgery when he was 16, and they lost the parent lost the lawsuit, but the kid did not get surgery until he was 18 anyway. I don't know about several kids. Go ahead and show me the proof. Where's the pudding, dude? Where is the pudding? You can't just say things, because too many things people just say end up not being true. And I go back and I look them up because you're too lazy to do it. And then I find out that nope, this did not happen. This is not a real thing. So if you've got evidence of this happening, show me. But I'm really tired of these lies getting to stand on their own. You put up or shut up. I did my research. All my sources are in the link that I sent. I think that, like, if you go and you look at homeschooled kids, it's interesting that actually homeschooled kids end up doing better than public school kids. But I wonder if there's like different segments of that, and like they do better on their SATs and ACTs. But these are the kids that their parents are afraid that if they go off to college and they learn things that their parents didn't teach them, then they're going to come back liberals. So anyway, I do find it interesting. Stop the lies. Please tell me where my lie is. Prove to me I'm wrong. I am open to learning, but just yelling "stop the lies" is not proof of anything. Why do all lisp? I don't lisp. It's true to them. That's a lie. Good. You got me. I don't know what's a lie or why it's a lie, but kids are being destroyed. Oh, see, these just yelling statements that have no evidence. Has nothing to do with right wing. And how do you know that? Prove it. I have no idea what you're talking about. What? Prove what? I'm just saying. Are you referring to the case where the guy with the 8? I read an article 2 years ago that I don't have the URL link memorized, but you can look it up. Okay, Big Mouth, go to Oregon. Okay. Oh, okay. So I have to drive from Texas to Oregon and go to a hospital and then ask for where the transgender children are having their surgeries or something. How did you see this? Did you just like, where you've got your little vending machine business there? You just wander around the hospital asking people why they're in there? How do you know? Like, you've seen it. How do you know that's what you saw? What makes you so confident that those were people that were there for transgender surgery? Did you go and you read their medical charts? Because that would be against the law. How do you know that's what happened? They aren't being destroyed mentally and physically. That's just, again, prove it. Show me this data. Show me that's happening. So I get a lot of statements. I have been asking for like a link or something. Haven't seen anything. Have not seen one person actually show any tangible evidence other than just yelling things and stomping their feet. Since kids are not getting surgeries, the law that passed to stop it from happening does not matter to. Well, no. First of all, there hasn't been a law. There's been a change in policy. And the change in policy doesn't just apply to surgeries. The change in policy applies to any gender affirming care, which includes counseling, which includes puberty blockers that are reversible. Those things, there's no reason that kids can't have them. These are not irreversible things. So, yes, the policy change does matter. Some, like the people, like it seems like the MAGA faithful are not able to distinguish between gender affirming care and genitals. Like your whole myopic view of everything in the world comes down to innie or outie. And so anything that doesn't have to do with whether you have an innie or an outie is somehow irrelevant to you. This is not about innies and outies. This is about the brain. And the brain not reconciling itself with whether there's an innie or an outie there. Okay. There are dozens of stories. I don't ignore them because they aren't there. There is nothing to ignore. You saying there are dozens of stories, I ignore them. All you have to do is look them up. I have looked them up. That's why I know about the one. When I looked up the Loudoun County thing. When I look stories up that people tell me about, when they've got specific ones, and it'd be nice if for once somebody linked one instead of just telling me to look them up. Look up this thing. Oh, you want me to do your own research. But there aren't dozens. I have looked it up. There's nothing to look up. That Fox News told you something else does not make it just magically appear. If it's true, prove it. Prove your own argument. No, he can freaking read. Right. The do your own research crowd, you notice they never do their own research. These are some people who believe teachers have cat litter trays in classrooms. Yeah, they probably do. Now that you brought it up, you'll probably hear somebody defending that. You don't know you're right. Why? Why don't you know how to spell you? I don't even know what you're trying to say there. If I thought I was wrong, why would I be saying what I'm saying? But I do think I'm right for a good reason. I've actually done the research. Have you done the research? They are doing it for kids again. Call the place. No, I'm not going to do your research. If I have to call places and ask them whether they're, dude, show me the evidence. I'm not going to go into an investigative probe calling hospitals in Oregon just to mollify some Jesus saves lives at Paradin guy on YouTube who doesn't know what he's talking about and doesn't care what the answer is. If you care about it so much that you are this convinced it's true, just post a link right there in the comments section. But you can't do that because you know it doesn't exist. And yet nobody can prove to me it does. You're repeating what you're told to believe. You're not doing any if you have done the research and you're not just being told, repeating what you've been told, go ahead and post it. Post the link. Post the proof that you have researched, that you have found, that you know that what you're saying is true. Prove your own argument. Yeah, I agree. Hurting kids is bad, which is why I don't think we should be hurting them. I think we should be helping the kids that are hurting. And right now, there are a lot of trans kids hurting. The anti-trans laws, when they get passed, causes the suicide rate to go up 7 to 78%. Do you actually care about the kids, or do you just care about your talking point? If you actually care about the kids, if you really mean what you just said, then you should be saying we should not be having these anti-trans laws. Yeah, kids are given hormone steroids. Yes, they are given hormone treatment and puberty blockers. I don't know what hormone steroids are, but yes, they are treated with reversible puberty blockers. That's part of their treatment. That is not a surgery, and that is reversible. You advocating for kids. I'm not advocating for kids to be mutilated. Where have I said that I'm advocating for kids to have transgender, have genital surgery? Where have I said that? That you can't have this conversation without thinking of children's genitals is actually what's disgusting. What kind of sicko are you? Why are you thinking about children's genitals? Yes, you're too lazy to look up things that you claim to have looked up and saw for yourself. And I know this because I keep asking you to post a link and you won't do it. You apparently know where this is. All you've got to do is hit Control C and Control V. That's how lazy you are. Okay, just gonna. Okay, most states, not all states, but most states don't allow it. Okay. I don't know what, like, I haven't said any of that. It's not medical practice to do surgeries until you're 18, number one. Number two, puberty blockers aren't surgeries. I never said, I went through a whole section where I talked about puberty blockers. Yes, puberty blockers are not surgeries. Puberty blockers are not irreversible. Puberty blockers only come when you're 16. Puberty blockers only come after like years of counseling. Puberty blockers are reversible. Like, there is puberty blockers, but that's part of transgender care. I am distinguishing between things like counseling and puberty blockers and surgery, a distinction that you can't seem to make because you can't stop thinking about children's genitals. Biden made me gay. So, okay. Oregon is run by a bunch of, okay. I have no idea who Jazz Jennings is. I know that there are some people that have transition regret. I also know that people that detransition also have regrets. I know that most of the people that detransition actually didn't have transition regret. They just like ran out of money and couldn't afford the puberty blockers or anything anymore. And so they detransitioned out of necessity, not choice. I know a lot of the times the people that detransition retransition later in life. I think that taking a single person and making them indicative of an entire community is called a generalization fallacy. And I think it's irresponsible and illogical. I don't know who Jazz Jennings is. I don't know whether you're accurately or dishonestly representing this Jazz Jennings person. I don't know whether his mother groomed him to transition or not. But I know that this is not what happens with transgender people normally. Most people that are transgender did not have their mothers condition them to anyway. Whatever nonsense you're spewing is not indicative of transgender people. Did you not see the lady speaking yesterday about? I didn't see the lady speaking yesterday about no. Oh, kids aren't doing. No, kids are not getting transgender surgery behind their parents' back. And no, one kid didn't do it behind their parents' back. One kid's parents were divorced, and his dad was getting him transgender care, and his mom didn't want him to get transgender care. So he sued to get it to happen. He didn't get it, or he won the lawsuit, but he didn't get the surgery until he was 18. You don't even understand the story that you're talking about. What do you do when the parents disagree? Nobody's brainwashing. The only ones being brainwashed are people like you into thinking that somehow transgender people are evil. What evidence? Where is the evidence? I have not seen any evidence to respond to, Derek. Use Google and show me in the chat. I'm in the middle of the chat right now. I don't have time to like research your little made up things. No, they don't. Mastectomies aren't gender, they're gender affirming care, but they're not on the genitals. Yes, people can get mastectomies. People also can get breast augmentation. And again, only a small percentage of people that transition detransition. And most of the people that detransition out of a financial necessity, not out of regret. Just like you saying a bunch of nonsense. Man, they're insane. The issue is that we're using transsexual now. This is a real hater. Pseudoscience only goes back to change. No. Transgender people have existed for thousands of years on every continent and every society throughout the history of mankind. The idea that this is a new invention is something. And how is it broken? Or how it's broken? I don't know what's broken. How is it gender affirming care? Why not affirming the original gender? Because that's what gender dysphoria is. Your brain and your genitals are telling you different things. So your brain is more real to you than your penis or your vagina. Your brain is more real than your innie or your outie. So what you're doing is you're affirming what your brain is saying rather than what your genitals are saying. So could you be the opposite gender? You can no more be the opposite gender because your brain and your genitals align. So to you, that's normal. But to them, asking them to align their brain and their genitals would be just as hard for them as for you to unalign your brain and your genitals. So the affirming care is to affirm the genitals to the brain. It's not about affirming the original gender. It's about allowing people to live peacefully the way that their brain tells them they are. Why does it matter to you how another human being lives their life? Should we also affirm other dysphoria? What do you think dysphoria means? The gender dysphoria is not like being misguided and thinking that something else happened. Or like thinking that you're a woman when you're really a man or something like that. No, dysphoria is the discomfort between your brain and your anatomy. It's the inability to reconcile those two things. It's the discomfort that comes from that. We aren't affirming the dysphoria. We are addressing the dysphoria by affirming the gender. My science is not false. You are just ignorant of the science. Please stop comparing your ignorance to my knowledge. Because you don't know something does not mean it's wrong. It just means you're ignorant. Children don't. Yes, you can. Because you don't need a fully developed brain in order to understand this. The identity starts forming when you're like 3 to 5. This is not new stuff. This is like people have actually studied this stuff. This is not just like I go like honestly, try and go and read some of the literature on this. It's not simple stuff. There's chromosomes involved. There's all kinds of things that are involved. There's all kinds of evidence. Like you don't know what you're talking about. That's the problem. This is another one of those circles have right angles arguments that I see people make. The argument is so far removed from the reality that the only conclusion I can draw is that you have no idea what the reality is. So please go read. Instead of arguing with me, there are people that have done extensive research on this. Read what they had to say instead of watching what Tucker Carlson has to say. No, research isn't looking at propaganda, so stop looking at propaganda. Look at the research. Yeah. Including gender-affirming treatments, though parental involvement is typical for surgery, notes Oregon DOJ. Can you, if you want to, can you look and tell me how many people have had gender-affirming surgery on their genitals under 15, over 15? Because I think that from what I understand, there are breast reductions and augmentations done, but not on the not actual gender reversals. Like gender affirming care is a big umbrella, and it includes everything from counseling to puberty blockers to upper surgeries to lower surgeries. And the upper surgeries I think can happen before 18 in some places, but the lower surgeries don't. Upper surgeries are reversible, lower surgeries aren't. So I mean, since they won't do it, if you could do it, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, typically though, that is very rare. Kaiser recently stopped providing surgical care under 19. Yeah, I think there may be like extremely rare exceptions where like the kid has like been through a lot of counseling, or like I don't know what the situations are, but I think maybe where they're extremely suicidal, or like they need it, but the norm is to wait until you're 18. My wife's cousin's wife has a son who got the surgery on his 18th birthday, and like that was his 18th birthday present from her, but he couldn't get it the day before, and this was in Kentucky or Illinois, maybe. Go ahead and just, you could have typed a link. You could have just put the link in instead of that comment. You can post the link. It may not post as a link, but I can always copy and paste it. Okay. I actually don't watch CNN. I do watch some MS Now, but mostly I do my research through reading actual papers, like the actual scientific peer-reviewed papers, is where I get most of my research on this. Okay, that is not common sense. That's just believing stupid things. Like, believing stupid thing is not common sense. It's just believing stupid things. I found them for you. Found what? We found. You found a PD file. I have no idea what a PD file is. PD file. No, puberty blockers are not mutilation. The medical community would disagree with that. Okay, this is good. At least he's quoting something. That some of the changes triggered by gender affirming hormone therapy cannot be reversed. Others may require surgery to reverse. This is one, not the same thing as mutilation. And number two, extremely rare and only on certain hormones. The hormones that cause that aren't usually given to children or, until afterwards. So this is a little bit misleading. You can get the hormone therapy in a way to where it is completely reversible. No, you're not. This is not true. This is just not true. I know that you were told this was true by somebody somewhere at some time, but it's not true. No, this is not true. The real cause of gender dysphoria. No, this is actually not true. No, it didn't. What it proved is that you took one sentence out of context and without an actual understanding. There are puberty blockers which can't be reversed. Those are not given to teenagers. Those are given to people that are going through the actual surgery. Also, you can't tell me it's not for. No, this is not true. I can tell you that something that isn't happening doesn't happen. But really, if you. No. Then did the BPAs in the food and water from the plastic that you consume all the time, did those like retroactively break the space-time continuum and go back 6,000 years in history and cause gender dysphoria through every single culture in every single continent throughout the history of mankind? Is that powerful? Jazz Jennings was a. So I know. I'm sorry. Is she? Oh, Jazz Jennings was a trans girl who had a TV show, and is happily living as a trans woman. Okay, so she wasn't like some example of a trans person that was forced into being trans or something. I actually, dude, I think I might have talked to you before. I think that you might have a misconception that liberals eat like plastic and stuff, but I bet if I made sandwich bread the other day, that if you had that my sandwich bread, you would say it's the best sandwich bread you ever had in your life. I made it with fresh ground white, hard white wheat, hard red wheat, barley, and kamut. I don't have plastic. I don't store my food in plastic. I bake my food in stoneware. Every I the only I mean there are a few appliances that have some BFA free plastic that it comes into contact with for a couple of minutes. But in general, I don't like plastic. I don't use stain or I don't have nonstick cookware. My only nonstick is my cast iron skillet with its seasoning. I don't know why you think that like eating healthy is like a thing conservatives do and liberals don't. I don't know where you get that from. It's a weird way of looking at the world. And I'll say the person that I have learned the most about baking from with fresh grain flour is she's got a site called Grains and Grit, and she's unquestionably a conservative. Um, Nobody's talking about sexual decisions. I am not trans. I am not advocating for child abuse. And I don't a PDF. I don't know what you. Oh, pedophile. No. Um, what's your responsible illogical? What's your responsible in illogical is supporting trans ideology because you're too afraid of hurt people's feelings. Well, that was a word salad. I just trans people exist. Okay, why can't you just like post? What happens when you post the link? I've never tried to post a link on a feed. Can't you just post the link anyway, and then I can just copy and paste it into an address bar? I'll share the link and everything. Surgeries, that's what happens. People are asked, like, they don't make their decisions until they're 18. Okay. Okay. This just shows you don't know what you're talking about. Not that whether your DNA is permanent or your chromosomes are permanent, but that you don't know that your DNA can have an effect on being trans, or that your chromosomes can have an effect on being trans. You're the one literally arguing that they can't change, but you're using chromosomes and DNA both may have an impact on people being trans. That's why sometimes identical twins are trans. DNA can have a very big impact on whether people are trans or not. I don't care about whatever made up nonsense they did in Florida. They're like the whole, like sometimes they take an incident and they all look into it, but a lot of times, like with the whole Loudoun County thing, and it's like there's this right wing thing that became a big thing that they. And then you go and you look into the details and no, they misrepresented it and they skewed it for political purposes so that they could villainize a transgender community that's already so marginalized that it can't stick up for itself. But they get people to give them money for it. There are plenty of people who have their body parts chopped off. Okay. There are not. This is all CNN and real news won't cover it because it's not true. You're lying. Okay, then what is the real percentage? What percentage of what? Okay. Some of these I don't know if they're parody or if they're. This is how weird MAGA is. They can say something like transgender was made up by two Chinese billionaires, and I don't know if they're being sarcastic and trolling as a joke or if they really believe that, because MAGAs could actually believe that. Well, that's some crazy nonsense. There is no facts to back up your 70, 80. Yes, there are. And not only that, it's in the deck that I shared. And if you look in the deck, then there's a link to that study. There are facts. And it's 7 to 78%, I think. And it all depends on the age and where like the age of the kids, and 16 to 18, I think, was higher. A higher percent, or 16 to 17. I'm not refusing to research. I'm in the middle of a podcast right now, but when I hear you keep saying the same thing and not showing evidence of it. Hi, Shuli. And then you'll act like we are committing genocide. I have no idea what that means. There he goes, lying again. You should really think about whether the facts you believe in actually scientific backed up or just some random statement. You should. You should. I agree. Everybody should. That's why I go through and I like actually study these things. I am not just reporting or talking about what MSNBC said. I went to like source material. I went to the actual peer-reviewed reports and looked at those. I am not just speaking off the cuff. You are, like you got, I don't know which side you're on here, but like people that are sitting there just declaring things as though they are true that they heard on Fox News or because Donald Trump said so. They're the ones that need to go and actually do some real research. Merry Christmas. Thank you. I actually don't celebrate Christmas because I'm a Christian, which is kind of weird, but Christmas is not a Christian holiday. God forbid you find an asswipe. Okay. I don't know why you love that word so much. If you believe this garbage, okay, All right. So just now we're just back to insulting my intelligence. Anything important? Okay. I don't know anything about any of that. It's interesting. I think that, if there's something valid there, look at it. It's worth looking at. Nixon unconstitutional war is actually cultural genocide rooted in xenophobia, classified kills, left and right wing or KKK, and ban religious practices. Okay. My brain tells me I am a supermodel billionaire. Can we make this happen somehow? Okay. This is not about role. This is like, I'm not saying a gender identity is like being a pilot. Like you can't just say I'm identifying as a pilot and then go fly a plane. This is about people identifying and just living their life as who they are to them. Like, I don't understand why some people feel like other people need to lead their life according to how it makes you feel. Like, if somebody is transgender and they live their whole life, and this guy that was born as a guy, and then she says she's a transgender woman and she lives her life as a woman, and how does that affect you? Why does that matter to you? Why is it so important to you that she can't do that? Why does that like bother you so much? I'm not literally twisting logic. I'm straightening out twisted logic. This is how, you know what's funny about that is like, this is how you lose elections. I'm not like campaigning for anything, but what you're saying is that the way that conservatives win elections is by hating on trans people. Why do you have to win elections that way? Why do you have to do that to win elections? Why can't you campaign and run elections on something positive and constructive? Solve inflation, solve problems instead of just make them up. I work from home. But yes, I wear a mask in public. And yes, masks work. You are literally saying that feelings are more important than what your body is. No, I'm saying what your brain says is more important than what your body is. This is not about a feeling. Are you who your brain is, or are you your penis or vagina or whatever you have? Like, who are you? Who is your identity? It's not just a feeling. You can be happy, you can be sad. Those are feelings. This is not just I feel like I'm a woman or I feel like I'm a man. This is like, that's a deliberate attempt to not understand things. You're gay. Apostrophe. Use the apostrophe. Here's something you can do. Like, if you're genuinely interested in learning more, one thing you can do that kind of helps is look at the original source papers and then like use whatever AI you trust, and you can paste it in and then ask them to summarize the article for you, and then ask them questions to get feedback on it. And that way you can kind of like, you don't need a PhD to actually, you know, like understand all the stuff, because some of the language is like, I have no idea what I'm reading here. But between reading it and translating it through AI, translating it from PhD into English, I can start to get an idea of like what it's talking about. Because one, you're talking about children, and children don't think they're fire trucks or airplanes or dinosaurs. They're not like identifying as a dinosaur. And what makes transgenderism different is children grow out of that. They might pretend they're a dog for a couple of days. But we're not talking about a kid that ran around barking for a couple of days because you got a new dog and he thought the dog was cute. Like, is that an honest question? Is that a sincere question? I really wish people could engage sincerely on this, because you really are talking about actual other people's lives that you're trying to determine how they live. Well, yeah, you know, like I just said, but you're just saying that everything I'm saying is propaganda. You're refusing to do any research whatsoever. Why is it that you're allowed to do that after I did research before I had this podcast? I did the research already. Why is it that you refuse to do any research that might challenge whether or not what you believe is true? By your logic, if my 7-year-old wanted implants, it would be okay. No, that's not my logic. My logic is, if your 7-year-old daughter says she's transgender, that you should take her and get her counseling to treat her gender dysphoria. And then if after she's 16, I don't know why she would need implants. Why would your daughter need implants? Anyway, if your daughter thinks she's a boy, if your daughter identifies as a boy at 7, Get her counseling. Get her gender dysphoria treatment. Sometimes people go and they have gender dysphoria treatment, and then they turn out to not be transgender. But it seems to be a permissive thing or a persistent thing. Years of counseling will generally affirm whether or not they have genuine gender dysphoria. People aren't just deciding that they want to live as the opposite gender because it's cool. They get bullied. They get rejected by society. They get rejected by their parents. They get rejected by family members. They're not doing this because it's cool and trendy. Okay, so an analysis of health insurance claims data for 2019 found 2 cases of 17-year-old biological girls who had their ovaries and uteruses removed due to gender distress. So that's hardly what like, this is. There may be like extreme cases where they're, and I bet they were not that shy of 18. Anyway, I think like this is actually sort of proof of what I'm saying. Like there's only the situations are extremely rare and specific. Even with the Oregon supposedly being packed with kids. Anyway, she was young enough for Matt Gaetz to date, I guess. Or old enough to, I don't know. Yes, and I think that's exactly what you should do. I think you should leave them alone. See, you keep repeating this, that they do. I'm saying that it is not normal practice. No, there are not thousands of lawsuits over this. There aren't. There just aren't. Nationally, studies indicate that genital surgeries are very rare for minors. An analysis of national data from 2016 found that only 405 youths across the entire country received genital surgery compared to over 3,200 chest surgeries. Most gender-affirming surgeries for minors, nearly all, are chest-related. So 405, that's more than I was expecting, but still, that's, when you consider that compared against the number of suicide attempts, it's a fraction of suicide attempts. And also, I'm wondering about like if they were 17 or, how many of those. I bet does it say their ages? How many of those are like under 16? This idea that kids are getting genital surgery, especially against their parents' wishes, and just out of the blue, like that whole nonsense thing. I imagine these 405,000 exceptions were exceptions for a reason. And not just like doctors are not just doing this because they hate people or something. I don't want to sexually mutilate children. Gender affirming care, even surgery on that's not mutilating. Yes, I'm a middle-aged man. I don't care about children's genitals. I care about children's lives, something you apparently don't care about because you're too busy obsessing over their genitals. I find them by asking questions. Like I'll ask, what was the question I asked? So they're like what I was asking for, what is the evidence that there is a difference in brain scans between transgender people and straight people or cisgender people. And so I found I found one paper and I started looking through that. And then most of these papers will also have like other papers linked that they reference in their paper. And so then I'll look at those papers too. And then you can kind of go down this sort of PhD wiki rabbit hole where you just kind of start looking at other things. And for those that weren't here earlier, this one study that I just really found fascinating showed that it's not like there's a line and we tend to look at it as a line, you know, like you're either cisgender or you're transgender, and it's like a straight line somewhere on that line. You're like a cisgender male or you're a transgender girl. It's actually more like they found out that cisgender males, or well, cisgender males, transgender males, cisgender women, and transgender women actually have 4 different types of brain phenotypes. So it's not so much a 2-dimensional thing as it is a 4-dimensional thing, or a cube instead of a line, a 3-dimensional thing. So it's a cube instead of a line. And if you look at it as like the identity you're born with, the identity that you identify with, and then the identity that you express, there's variations in all of that, right? And when I say there's even variations in gender and gender that you're born with, because your chromosomes and everything like that can also vary based on your gender, even after your sexual organ is determined. Your brain can have different chromosomes, different chemistry associated with it, and so all of that all plays in. So even if you choose to be an alpha male, like you're born a male, and then you 100% decide you're a male, and you express male in every single way you can think of. You just want to be as alpha as possible, and you run around and you call people betas. All of that is still in this cube. You just are an extreme part of this cube. There are other variations of that, like maybe somebody is some more feminine characteristics, but they still identify as a male, and they are still born a male, but they just, like cooking or something. They might like a thing that is generally associated as a feminine trait, and so they express that gender identity in a different way, other than just male. And they're not just the guy that the only cooking he does is, grabbing a big piece of meat and throwing it on a fire, holding it over there with his bare hands or whatever. This is also like people conflate drag queens with transgender women, but this also explains that it's a diverse sort of thing. Anyway, I got to thinking about this because of this paper that I looked at that showed that cisgender people and transgender people have different phenotypes for their brains, even than men and women. Like it's an array. It's a complex thing. It's not just one or the other. So in one sense, you can say every single person is their own gender. All liberals are demonic. Okay. See, like this is helpful. Even if I had a kid that was trans and they wanted surgery, I would not allow it. God made you a man for a reason, and God made you a woman for a reason. Okay. Okay, but that's probably why your kid won't want to talk to you after he's 18. Why are you so hard? I'm not. Okay. Yes, but it can be reversed. And it's not mutilation. Dude, if you hop. Okay. Just going to pop down to the bottom here. I love this gender essentialism. I don't have any idea what that means. Your bone structure shows what sex you are. Males always have one structure. And okay, I bet you think that white people have different size skulls than black people too. Um, no, cooking doesn't make someone a female. I'm saying that gender identity is something that is a sociological construct, and cooking at home is generally considered in Western society as a feminine um, exhibition or feminine characteristic. I'm not making that a thing. I am saying that's what it is. Saying our culture and our society has determined that. So if you do that, that's part of the your gender expression. Even if your gender identity is I am a male, even if your gender birth is male, you will do certain things that may be associated with being a woman. Or if a girl plays baseball, she can be a straight cisgender girl, and she can be identify as a girl, and she was born as a girl, but she wants to play on the boys baseball team because she's got a good fastball and the Bad News Bears need her or something like that. Like there are certain traits that you exhibit that are characteristic of what society calls feminine or masculine, and we interpret that in a certain way. So that's like our dresses. Did dresses make you a female? No. Does a drag queen become a female because they wore a dress? No, it means they expressed based on our society uh characteristic of a female that we consider female. This is my whole point, is that it's not whether you cook or not. It's just we have an interpretation of things. And those interpretations aren't really constant. Like you can be a male that likes to cook, or you can be a male that doesn't like to cook. And there's just an infinite number of variables. And some things we call male and some things we call female for whatever reason. Some things we might call neutral. We have entire languages where certain words have, feminine and masculine designations. Like we don't just think of it as American either. Like there's a whole world out there. There are as many, like every identity is basically its own gender. What a just ridiculously bizarre comment. Um, could okay. Trans rights are human rights. Right. I agree. I just it's almost sad that we have to like talk about things like that. Like human rights are human rights and trans people are human. All humans should just have human rights. Republican rights are human rights. Right. All humans should have human rights. But your right as a Republican does not mean that you get to omit somebody else's rights as a human. Thank you. Abstania W. I think you should accept trans people. And I think that trans people can accept themselves. I just don't think you can accept them. If you can't argue why gender identity is not important, then so many forms of identity. I don't know what you think you're saying. Um, Pilot is not an identity, it's an occupation. There may be a genetic component to political identity, honestly. There's actually some studies on that show that the more flexible you are in your thinking, the more likely you are to be a Democrat or to be a liberal, and the more constrained you are in your thinking, the more likely you are to be a conservative. So, and then that can be actually there could be a genetic component to that. Like there literally may be a genetic component to political identity. The dollar is a social construct and is nevertheless very real and important. Yep, that's true. I think that I think, how does that fit into our conversation though? Are you saying that because gender is a social construct, it doesn't mean that it's not real? I would agree with that. All trans people should be accepted to the nut house. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't funny. The lower your IQ, the more likely you are. Yeah, that whole 90%, that whole percent of your brain thing is actually bogus. We all use 100% of our brain. I mean, that's why we have it. We just use it for different things, different parts. That's like a science fiction myth. Don't you find it very convenient that your concern about identity just happens to perfectly map onto a minority advocacy group? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Are you suggesting that I should disagree with something just because it's from a minority advocacy group? Like minorities don't have a right to advocate for things? Like what's the actual gist of the argument here? Why is that convenient for me? My concern about identity is because I have a transgender nephew that I don't want to have to go through hell. I agree. I don't know where I've ever argued that Republicans should be outlawed. I absolutely think we have to respect the rights of every person's political beliefs, as long as they are within the realm of not eliminating other groups of people's beliefs. Like, I have no problems with Republicans. I mean, I have issues with Republican beliefs, but I have no problem with the legality of Republicans existing. Your president, on the other hand, has problems with me legally existing. Like anti-trans, no, anti-trans couldn't be genetic in that sense. Because one is about understanding and knowledge, and one is just about your actual brain chemistry. I'm not going to read your Joy Reid comment. Yes, we need to respect the. Yes, I mean, if you're genetically stupid, then, you know, that's on them. If they're willfully stupid, I can argue with them. If they're willfully stupid and president, I can not vote for them. Like the stolen election. Of course you won't. Well, you're like, I think, are you? I wonder if there's like some sort of number of comments award, because I think Freaky here would win it. If Bill Clinton molested children, he should go to jail. Absolutely. I think I don't understand why this is even controversial. Anybody that molested children should go to jail. Period. If Bill Clinton did it, send him to jail. If Donald Trump did it, send him to jail. I have never heard anybody advocate for if Bill Clinton molested children, he shouldn't go to jail. You have the right to want whatever political outcomes you choose. You do not have the right to get whatever political outcomes you want. We shouldn't ban Republicans, but we shouldn't obey them either. To a point, I think we should follow the law unless the law is and like when black people sat at the lunch counter and violated the segregation laws and civil disobedience. I think, like I agree with that, in that we shouldn't follow the law. And I think in things like some of the things like, letting immigrants know what their rights are and stuff like that the Republicans are all upset about. I'm suggesting that your idea about what is or is not respectable identity happens to perfectly enclose the trans community while excluding others that you literally scoff at. Yeah, I know you're making a false equivalence. I am pointing out that it's a false equivalence. You think Jimmy Carter was on Epstein Island? Wait, hang on. How? I think weren't some of them dead before Epstein? Okay, who are the last five? Trump. Are you counting Trump twice? So you think Trump, Biden, Obama, Clinton, and Trump, Biden, Bush, Clinton, and Obama. I don't know. And I don't, anyway. Someone can actually identify as a pilot and could feel dysphoria when you do not address them as such. No, that's not at all what dysphoria means. That's a complete misunderstanding of what dysphoria means. And there's no such thing as identifying as a pilot. Okay. It's like you're just throwing in a random noun. It'll be more than just Bill Clinton. It'll be all of Hollywood, and Donald Trump will not be on there. Okay, if everybody in Hollywood and is on, like, again, if anybody raped children, they should go to jail. Should there be gender affirming care for minors? It depends on what you mean by care. Should children with gender dysphoria be able to receive counseling? Should care that saves children's lives be allowed? Why would Clinton go to jail while Democrats can cause gender dysphoria in children and emotionally, physically hurt them for the rest of their lives with irreversible procedures? Well, I don't know. That just seems like a whole lot of words that don't say anything. Okay, so do you think that segregation laws were good? Do you think segregation laws should have been followed? Do you think that the people that were immoral were the ones that sat at the lunch counter while they were beaten for being black? What about just, the law that was passed that the entire Epstein files needed to be released today, and they're not all being released. So a specific law was passed specifically for the Trump administration, and they are not following that law. They are following part of the law, but not the whole law. So are you upset with Donald Trump for breaking the law that was literally passed just for him? They literally passed a law just for him, and he did not follow it. I think Trump had Kirk killed for Israel and to distract from Epstein. I don't think that Trump had Kirk killed. I think Kirk was killed, and ironically, I did not plan this, but ironically because of his anti-trans rhetoric. And he, I don't know if this guy was, I don't think he was left-wing. I think he was, the whole Nick Fuentes thing seems to make more sense to me, but he was like just kind of this niche of MAGA that like went down this transgender hole. He got a transgender girlfriend, and he decided to take it upon himself to assassinate Charlie Kirk, and he did it. But that's all we know. I mean, we don't even know that. I think that we are too eager to assign too much to too little. And I mean that this is a man who made a decision, and he represents only himself. I think that willfulness itself, yes, willfulness is based in brain chemistry. Yes, I agree. And I think that we need to be careful too about just making guilt by association. One of the people that was on Epstein Island that nobody denies is Stephen Hawking. I don't think anybody thinks that even Stephen Hawking was raping children since he couldn't move. But there was a physics thing that Epstein hosted on a nearby island. He had a submarine on Epstein Island. He brought Hawking over because Hawking had never been underwater. And he brought Hawking over so that he could go down in the submarine and just see underwater and see what that was like. He just wanted to give Hawking that experience. That's the only reason Hawking was on Epstein Island. So I think there are innocent reasons that people could be on Epstein Island. Epstein also had a lot of charity work and stuff like that that people could have been associated with. Being associated with Epstein does not make you a pedophile. People that had, like when you start seeing things like the picture that Donald Trump drew, when you start seeing him at sex parties with Jeffrey Epstein, when you start looking at things like he knew about the girls, you start to wonder, well, maybe Donald Trump does know something. And if Donald Trump was involved and he says, oh, well, once I found out about it, I threw him out. And it's like, you found out about it like right about the same time that he was being prosecuted for it, and you hung around with him for the 15 years before that during the peak of all his stuff, but somehow you didn't know about it all that time you were hanging around with him. He had like 16 of your phone numbers in his phone book, but you didn't know about it. You went to all these parties with him and yucked it up with him, but you didn't know about it. You were buddies with Jeanine Maxwell, but you didn't know about it. And it's not like Donald Trump has been proven to be the most honest person in the history of the planet. So when he says he doesn't know something, when he says he doesn't know about something, I take that with a grain of salt, very, very large grain of salt. Like basically the entire Utah Flats grain of salt. Leftist laws hurt people, but okay, all parties and lobbyists should be banned. If you can't feel, I have been thinking about this, and this might surprise people that I say this. I kind of like the idea of just getting away with political parties entirely. I might do a whole podcast on this. I feel like we have become like the founding fathers wrote the Constitution so that there would be a balance of powers between the branches of government, between the congressional branch, between the judicial branch, between the legislative, or the executive branch, judicial branch, and legislative branch. And they were supposed to be kind of the tug and pull, and the balance and the checks were supposed to come from one another. But what we've evolved into through a two-party system, first through the Democrats and the Whig parties, and then that became the Democrats and the Republican parties, and then the parties kind of each, over years, they change what they believe in. And the interesting thing is that the Whig party was actually started as like an anti-king party. So there's like irony to this today. Like the Whig party is actually more like the No Kings parade. But without going into all that, the reality is that right now we don't have the balance of powers and the separation of powers that they established. We have just two parties. And when Biden had both houses of Congress, he got his stuff through. And when Trump had both houses of Congress, he got his stuff through. We could never impeach a president right now, no matter what they do. We had a guy try to overthrow the country and he couldn't get impeached. Like, we have gotten to the point where it's just, we are not running the government that the founding fathers intended. We have a president that is raising tariffs without congressional approval. Joe Biden did that too. Obama did that too. Bush did that too. We've been doing this for several presidents now. We've got George Bush got this kind of pseudo authorization for war, where it was supposed to be that if the UN approved, what they actually voted for was if the UN approved it and decided to join with him, then they would empower him to act. The UN never did that. He decided to invade anyway. Congress never stopped him. Then Barack Obama came along. ISIS evolved, and Obama asked for authorization to act. The Republicans in Congress said, actually, the powers that you're asking for are insufficient. And just through the sheer mechanism of financing it, said, go ahead and just keep doing all your drone strikes. And then Obama expanded that. And then the drone strikes, which now MAGA complains about, were an expansion of the of that. And then 2017 comes along. Bush actually accelerates the use of the drone strikes, still going after ISIS, which, by the way, were an actual terrorist organization, and went up like, I think, 4 times the rate of what Obama was doing. And now he's extended this. What Obama's justification was that the bills, the authorizing Bush said associated forces, which it didn't actually say, and which, by the way, ISIS was actually at war with Al Qaeda. They weren't even associated with Al Qaeda, but they were brown and they were terrorists. And so he expanded that. Then now Trump is expanding this into the, I can just call anybody a terrorist organization and go out and kill people. And so we've been what-ifing the next guy so long that now the next guy is the what if. He is the guy that is just saying, I can say go out and kill people, and then you have to go out and kill people. So anyway, sorry to go on this long-winded detour, but I agree with you. We need to get rid of parties and lobbyists. I think that so much of this is just, rather than congressmen and senators seeing themselves as congressmen and senators, they see themselves as Republicans and Democrats, and they just go along with whatever the president does, or they oppose whatever the president does. And they're not looking at their roles as, the way it was designed to be. And you've got you've got the president sitting there making decision, or deciding that the judicial branch can only can only make rulings that disagree or that agree with him. And if anybody disagrees with him, then it's because they're a liberal or whatever. So we have no more balance of powers. We have no more separation of powers. We just have a president that does whatever he wants whenever he wants. Oh, I mean, we shouldn't cave to their demands and pass laws we disagree with to pacify reactionaries. Once a law is passed, we should follow it to the extent our conscience allows. I'd have to know the specifics of which laws you're talking about. I've been a Christian I became a Christian in 1990. I was baptized October 6th, 1990. I've been a Christian for 35 years. I spent 15 of those years as a pastor. And I've actually probably read the Bible more than most people. I've read the entire thing about 10 times, and I've read the New Testament more than 100. So while I appreciate your preaching the gospel to me, don't assume that just because people aren't Christian or people aren't Republicans doesn't mean they're not Christians. Bill Clinton had 90% approval rating when he was being impeached. This is the post multiple rapes. I'm sure we can get. I don't think Bill Clinton was impeached for raping anybody. Oh, I see. On all the Epstein stuff, I'm just saying wait until we know. Carter, LMAO. Carter is like, why wasn't stagnation cool when I was president? I doubt Obama was. I'd be. Oh, we're way back there. I went on that long tangent, and so we got all kinds of people weighing in on which presidents were on Epstein Island. I've never seen anything showing that Obama had any relationship with Epstein. There's more than that. Like this idea that the only evidence that Trump had anything to do with Epstein was this one picture of him with these Miss American contestants. That's not true. Having autism, yes, having autism does not mean you can identify as normal. The burden of bringing normalcy to my life is on me, as I am the one who has the problem. I would just say that having autism doesn't mean you're not normal. You're just a different kind of, your brain has a different way of working. I think we got to get past this idea of normal. Nobody's normal. If anybody is truly normal in every aspect of the way, that's the scariest mother bleeper on the planet. I haven't deleted any comments. I feel the same way when Mindy Kalig's brother said at the getting into medical skull and powder in violation. Don't know what that. I imagine that's a joke or an allusion to some show. No, because you can see I am invents any child they have. Okay, I don't think you. I don't even know what all that means. Okay. I don't know what that means either. They tried to put him in prison for 700 years, bankrupt him to fail. Okay. I would just point out they did not try to imprison him for 7 years. He committed a bunch of crimes. He got tried for it and he got convicted. Or he got investigated and grand jury warrants were enlisted. They didn't try anything. He tried the crime and he got prosecuted and investigated. It's not about them, it's about him. This whole idea that somehow he was an innocent victim. All he did was try to overthrow the government, and people got like all crazy about it. All he did was try to blackmail Ukraine into faking a fake investigation into Hunter Biden. And all the liberals just got all antsy about it, like everybody does that. So another person thinks that Trump had Kurt killed for Israel. That seems to, like some conspiracies. I can't expect others to work harder to be around me or deal with my autism and have no consequence or not live in reality, man. No to affirming care. I don't know what autism and affirming care have to do with each other. Autism is not a gender expression. This would be more like if somebody told you not to be autistic at all. Like you're talking about how you have autism. And people wouldn't just ask you to behave in a certain way, but ask you to actually be, like to deny that you have autism. But that's different too, because it's not about how you exist as a, like it's not your actual identity. It's a thing about you. Like people are trying to make it seem like, I see this a lot, that like the express, like gender expression is as being just like, oh, and if it were really that easy and that different, then you could just as easily identify as the opposite gender as just decide to not be a pilot as be a pilot. Okay, back to that guy. All right. mRNA is a DARPA developed biological weapon. Most vaccines are stepped on with the cancer virus. Okay, you're a crazy person. Will it change if Dems win House majority at midterm? I don't know if what will change. I think that everything won't just be rubber stamped, and there might be some investigations into some of the things that are going on. Like Trump has made $4 billion off of the presidency in his second term in less than a year. That should be disconcerting. You don't have to play with their delusions. Like, why do you have a say at all? Like, you can call it playing with their delusions. Just let them exist. Why do you have an opinion on how other people live their lives? It's just so weird that you think you get to have an opinion on how somebody else lives their life, and that somehow you feel and it's an affront to you that they live in absence of your opinion about it. All right. $10 billion for nobody lied about January 6th, and nobody's having to pay $10 billion. He filed a lawsuit for $10 billion that he has absolutely no chance of winning because they edited a speech that he actually gave and showed him saying words that he actually showed in a country that he doesn't live in, and which actually had no harm at all. Okay. Not the guy that just told me that mRNA vaccines are like a weapon. No, just I don't know what I'm saying. That's Alex Jones, but it's pretty impressive that Alex Jones was over at the White House with Donald Trump. Like the guy that actually likes Alex Jones is the guy that you voted for. Okay. Oh, in a documentary. Is that what we're calling that? Thank you, Fauci. So, show emails showed spike protein DNA code from AIDS was partially identical. Oh, look. Oh, disinformation stuff. All right. People dress certain ways, talk certain ways, have certain values. It's like you pluck gender from someone's identity, say that gender is what counts, and all the rest is just effect. No, I'm not. I'm saying that's what you do. I'm just saying let people live their lives in the way that they want to live them. Human rights are human rights. If you are asking for anything more, you're a supremacist. What if, I mean, I'm not sure where you stand on this, on all this, so I'm not speaking to you directly, but just what if you're not asking for more? What if you're asking some people have less? Because I think that's what's going on with the transgender thing. Because it's not transgender people are asking for more rights. They're just asking for equal rights. And the people that oppose transgender people are asking that transgender people have less rights because somehow it violates their rights for transgender people to exist. That kind of stuff can get you killed. Trump can win the lawsuit. Okay. You say Alex Jones like it's a bad thing. Most of his. Okay, I'm the kook. You You don't believe in simple biology. You don't understand the biology. The problem is the biology isn't as simple as you think it is. It's not just any or outie. Trans people don't get extra rights. They don't want extra rights. They just want the same right. What if I made your medical decisions for you? What if I told you that I got to have say over your medical decisions? Would that give you less rights or more rights? Mm-hmm. If our government hadn't passed away $30 trillion on other countries and every American, I don't know what that nonsense is about. Are you talking about? I don't know. We've got just like crazy people. Are you actually comparing like selling people in other countries things as passing or buying things from other countries? I don't know. Like the idea that I need to respect that a man called a woman, but I have no responsibility to give some respect to someone who identifies as a country boy or a manic pixie dream girl. Why are the adjectives there? No man wants to be called a woman. Trans women want to be called women. And if a cisgender boy wants to be called a boy, call him a boy. If a cisgender girl wants to be called a girl, call him a girl. Call them a girl. Call her a girl. The only one that's trying to draw a distinction is you. And it's about and I this is the really crazy thing about what you're saying, and I don't think you understand it, is you've taken it and you've made it about what you call them and not about what they live their life as. It's not about you. Can you accept the possibility that somebody else's life and how they live it has nothing to do with you? It's about them. That you say, like the idea that I need to respect, like, oh, I need to. It's not about you. Live your life how you want, but keep the children out of it. Okay, so what that means is I say keep the children out of it. You're the ones that are bringing the children into it. The parents should be able to raise their kids how they want. So what about they can't, so as long as they don't impose that mindset and that the lifestyle on children, transgender is not a lifestyle. And making their own decisions of their biological sex, that's not even a rational organization of words. Nobody makes a decision about their sex. Nobody even makes a decision about their gender. And there's no such thing as a transgender lifestyle. What right do transgender people have that nobody else has? Are they asking for that nobody else has? They're asking for the right to like live their own lives. That's it. What rights are they asking for that nobody wants, that nobody else has? Okay, I don't want to go into all this wacko. It's a distraction. I don't need to respect someone's views themselves as inseparable from their Compton background, but if he thinks he's a woman, I have to respect that. I have no idea what this is referring to. It's not a right to be called by a certain name. See, this is again, you are making it about you. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not a right to be called by a certain name or pronoun, but it is a reasonable thing to do. I mean, don't be a-holes to each other, not to call somebody by a preferred name. Right. Like there's just a matter of just being a decent person. Like it doesn't hurt me to call a transgender woman a woman and use her preferred name. I had a coworker that came out as trans while we were working together, and one day her name was Priscilla, and the next day his name was Victor. I called him Victor. I called him him. Never hurt me at all. But in respecting his identity, it strengthened our relationship. I had a better relationship with my coworker by respecting him as a person. You're trying to have a say that our money should be. Where did your money come into this? If you believe children can give bodily consent to, children aren't getting bodily reassignment surgery. They are not asking gender people to have rest rights. They are asking that people born as men don't enter restrooms. Yeah, we covered all of that. When you ask transgender women to enter men's restrooms, they get raped, they get murdered, they get assaulted. When you ask, like, they become victims of violence. There has never been a case of a transgender woman assaulting a woman in a women's restroom. So you're asking, and this idea that there is some infringement on your rights if somebody pees next to you, that's not you giving up a right, and it's not them getting a right. It's just rules. That doesn't, how is that superiority complex? Who's being superior? If somebody can't live according to the way that you want them to live, How is that like a superior? They have the audacity to live in a way that you don't agree with. Therefore, they have a superiority complex. I think the one that has a superiority complex is the person that thinks everybody else has to agree the way to live the way that they subscribe. I have no idea what question you're asking. I'm not ignoring anything. Let's go back and okay. If you believe children can give, I don't believe children can give bodily consent to gender reassignment surgery. I don't know what question I'm ignoring. I can't find your question. This is just not true. Like that's just fundamentally scientifically untrue. And I covered this at the beginning, and I just don't want to go back through it. If I don't do certain medical things, the democratic state will take my children away. Oh, well. Okay, show me evidence that somebody had their children taken away because the democratic state took their children away because they wouldn't do certain medical things. Where's the evidence that this has ever happened? You can call us crazy for supporting the idea of self-evident fact of, I'm not calling you crazy, I'm calling you wrong. It's not a self-evident fact, and it's not a fact. It's just not true. I've met doctors that testified in front of Congress and have seen the paper trail showing DARPA created, more craziness. We're not talking about that right now. Forcing a label of cis, I'm not forcing a label of cis on you because it's a slur. It's a word that exists. I am not forcing you to call yourself cis. It doesn't mean you're not. I'm just saying you don't have to be a-holes about calling somebody. Oh, okay, so we're back down to here. Now this is the guy. I don't know. Do you believe parents also have the right to mutilate their children? I don't think parents mutilate their children. I think when people grew up as feminine like men get misinterpreted. Okay, what is your basis for saying this? You have this opinion that you have just like, I don't know, pulled from deep inside your intestine. But what is the basis for this? Do you realize that like people aren't just going and just guessing about things? Like people have actually studied this. And again, this has gone on. There have been transgender people in every civilization on every continent throughout the history of mankind. There were American Indians that were transgender long before we ever came here. There are people in India that were transgender, in Pakistan that were transgender. There are people in South America, people in Hawaii. There's people that are all over the world that were transgender and throughout history that have been transgender. This is not like some new thing that somebody liked a doll and so they became a transgender. Okay. This is not a proven fact, but you can convince a child to do anything. Nobody's talking about children. Gender is not personality. I mean, like, you can have tomboys, right? That do boy things. They're called tomboys. That does not mean they're transgender. You can be a cisgender tomboy. Yes, we are born with it, but it's not whether you have an innie or an outie that you're born with that determines it. I am. What happens when you teach a moron a less on? Does it just become an on? An average on? The funny thing is, I don't know which side you're talking to here. I feel like I'm trying to have a sensible conversation, and I keep getting stuff like, "Oh, well, you want to have children mutilated." It certainly is a lifestyle. It's an identity. It's a culture. No, it's not. It's not any of that. You don't read. You just watch Fox News and have people tell you what to think, and then you regurgitate the stupidness. Okay, go ahead and change it then. I'm fine. If you want to be called trans women aren't women, go ahead. Wear that at work. Wear it proud. It just says a lot about you that you would choose that for a name. See, you're making it about you when somebody tries to force you to. I'm not asking anybody to. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, this is just a made up thing. I've got my cat insisting on being allowed to come in here. Poor guy. He's hungry. There are large concentrations of transgender children in dramatic. How many? They are being prove it. There are a bunch of MAGAs in red states that say a lot of stupid things because stupidity is being groomed in MAGA land. Ted Cruz is a preferred name for Rafael Edward Cruz. Now, I have a preferred name for Rafael Edward Cruz, but I can't say it because the channel is monetized and I'm not allowed to swear. Tired of hearing about the woes of... Why do you keep talking about it then? Why do you focus so much time and energy and effort on marginalizing 1% of the population? Why do you insist on doing it? If it matters to you so little, why do you actually try to make things bad for them? Respecting someone as an individual and believing in reality are two different things. It's not polite to... But whose reality? Who is defining reality? Because you don't understand their reality does not mean it is not real to them. To them, your notion that you can just decide to not be transgender is just as unrealistic as you think they are. Your inability to change your mind is proof that they don't have the inability to change their mind, because their mind is no different than yours. It's no less hardwired. Hey, y'all, if you can't be nice to other people, shut the F up like your mama's tried to teach you. I hope you all fall down a well because you've got the mental powers. I just wish they would come out of the well. I feel like so many of them, their world is in a well. They see everything in the well. And if you try to explain there is a world outside of the well, they just call you insane because they've never seen outside the well. Trans people should get their own island. See, like, that's just so weird. Islam is against... Oh, now we're like, Islam is against transvestites. Islam is against gay people. I have no idea. So you're saying you're like an Islamic fundamentalist, that you're like them, except you just like want to kill people for a different God? Yeah, that's not the same thing. Surgery, there's no such... I never told you men and women are interchangeable. That's such an ugly word. They're not transvestites. And no, they're transgender. There is not a single case of a transgender girl assaulting a woman in a bathroom, including on school grounds. And if you're going to tell me about Loudoun County, I already covered that. That is bogus. That was a cisgender guy that was like already hooking up with the girl. She changed her mind. He is not transgender. He never said he was transgender. His mother says he's not transgender. His grandmother says he's a sociopath. The whole thing is made up. And plus, there were bathroom law, the law against the policy on bathrooms hadn't even changed yet. So yeah, go and read a book. Adults have the right to do what they want to themselves. Yeah, they're not getting that. I'll look it up. I'll look that up and get back to you tomorrow. But so far, every time I've seen somebody quote one of these cases, it ends up being here. Is this the one? There was another one where somebody. Is this the one where it was actually in her home? This is the one. This one was. Okay, so looking it up right now. Here, I'll even share my screen with you. Okay, so it says Crawford committed the offense shortly after being released. Yeah, this is the one where I'm referring to a public restroom. This is a woman that it happened in a house. This is a private bathroom. So no, that's not the same thing. But this shows how desperate people are to find one case of a transgender woman assaulting. Meanwhile, there's been 342 murdered transgender women. And the thing is, oh, this one transgender person that did it at a person's house. Host, you are lecturing us about respect. When we grew up watching the left put Jesus, I'm a Christian. This idea that nobody put Jesus in a jar of piss and laugh about it, and it has nothing to do with identity, it has to do with your religion being forced down people's throats, which, by the way, isn't even Christianity at this point. You talk more about hate than you do about Jesus. If trans think they are being targeted because schools are banning pride flags, and this has nothing whatsoever to do with pride flags or trans flags. Nobody cares how many people live their lives. Y'all the ones trying, but you do. That's literally what you are doing here, arguing about. Worst of the worst criminal proceedings begin in case of transgender illegal alien accused of child rape. Oh, so this is new. I don't know. This seems to just I can't copy and paste this. Just reading this. This did not happen in the bathroom. By the way, cisgender people rape people too. It's not like and citizens rape people too. Like making I think this has nothing to do with bathroom laws, so sure you have. Yeah, I don't believe you. Yeah, that's the one I was just looking at. Has nothing to do with bathrooms. You know, it's like if it weren't for that, the only prison rape that ever happened was this trans woman that raped somebody. But otherwise, like we wouldn't even know what prison rape was. Okay, that is a opinion that is not based in substance. You want evidence that the government in the United States has ever taken children away from parents who do not get certain medical procedures for their. No, I want evidence that parents who do not are taken away for not giving transgender surgery to their children. And yes, that is completely made up. I noticed the little goalpost moving you're doing there. Did you know that? Actually, it's not true. There are plenty of cultures right now that have not collapsed that have transgender. Something like 600,000 kids removed by the Democratic streak. Do you think that kids don't get removed in Texas? You have Greg Abbott sitting there threatening to take away kids from parents who provide transgender health care. Does that bother you? And yes, I don't know your numbers, but yes, kids get taken away by the government because the parents are abusive or the parents are negligent for the sake of the kids. Yes, sometimes that happens. But it doesn't happen because they're not getting transgender care. No, that's literal transphobia. You are being afraid of trans people simply because they're trans. That's like literal, actual transphobia. You are saying you are afraid of trans people. One would hope that there's a down, like the hills just got to start coming down at some point. Because you vote, and we are not making things bad for them. You have made like 900 laws against them. They don't want any special privileges. This is just such a weird, like, there is nothing to what you say. You're just like yelling things. I'm like 30 years younger than you. I don't watch Fox News. I can't believe that you are so strongly opposed to the idea that there is not a trans lifestyle. And gay people, there is a gay lifestyle, yes. That you don't know that gay and trans are not the same thing is really telling and not at all surprising. All words are made up words. Do you think that God invented words and like words are always made up. But this word was a word that describes people who are afraid of trans people for no reason. Anyway, see if there's anything worth reading here before I sign off. I gotta pee. It's been almost 4 hours. When you're saying trans people, are you talking about? I am talking about people who identify as a different gender than what they were, than their birth gender. I have no idea what that means. Words only mean what? Okay. So anyway, that's enough for today. If you missed the first hour, I hope you can go back and look at it. That's where the substance was covered. But have a nice weekend. I'll see you on Monday.